Devil. Okay, are you all ready? Rias inquired calmly as she fixed her school outfit to look perfect. The rest of her peerage stood at the ready, preparing for their king to lead the way as the pure-blooded devil nodded. This is going to be a meeting of the leaders from the three factions and we are being graced with the chance to see it ourselves. So we need to be on our best behavior. Naruto, Issei, I'm talking to you two in particular. No outbursts, okay?
Sorry bucko, I'll be more respectful this time. Issei apologized with a deep bow of his head. Do we really have to be called out? Yes, because you two threw blame at Michael-sama the last time he was here. Rias nodded before narrowing her eyes at her boyfriend, plus Kurama told me how bad you are with authority and respecting leaders. Kurama told you? Naruto summoned his sacred gear and glared down at it angrily. When the hell were you talking to Rias without me knowing? When you sleep. Rias and I try to strike up conversation over the sound of your rumbling, aggravating snoring. She told me a few interesting things about this world. When did you start calling her Rias? She was redhead girl just a few days ago.
She deserves more respect than that. Thank you, Kurama. Rias graciously nodded to her new companion before the sacred gear vanished. She giggled at the frown that twisted Naruto's face before waving her hand. We aren't colluding or planning anything behind your back. Stop panicking. And it was hard to wake you up when you looked so cute napping. She tapped his cheek before looking to another side of the room. And are you two going to be okay while we're gone?
Absolutely bucko. We have drinks and snacks and we aren't gonna be in a room filled with scary, unfamiliar people. It'll be great, Gasper excitedly responded while comfortably seated in his cardboard box.
The club had made a lot of strides handling Gasper's anxiety and agoraphobia, enough that they could get him out of the campus without much fuss. Of course that was if he was still at least wearing a paper bag over his head. But no matter how much they helped him, it was clear the young Dampier felt safer in a cardboard box. The little blonde boy beamed a smile at his competitor. Get ready, Kaneko-chan, you're gonna experience the full range of my skills. Don't get a bloated head. Kaneko casually responded as her fingers danced over the controller. Keep boasting and you'll trip up at the important part.
And no I won't, you always do. Stop saying that, Kaneko-chan.
Stop sucking then. Well if you two are fine then we should get going. The peerage started out the door and made their way to the main building of the school where the meeting was being held. They headed up the stairwell and spotted the door slightly ajar with voices already conversing inside it.
Rias pulled the doors open and stepped inside to see the leaders and their entourages.
Searzex smiled and nodded to his little sister as Serafal beamed brightly and waved to her. Standing patiently behind them against the wall was Sona and her queen, Tsubaki. The two Sea-Tree devils nodded to their fellow devils as they came to join their side. And standing directly behind Searzex, chair was his maid and queen, Graphia, looking as calm and professional as ever. Also sitting in his seat adjacent to the mouse was the host of heaven, Michael the Archangel. The radiant man looked over to the group of youths he had met with just the other day and gave them a kind smile and nod of his head. Standing protectively behind the angel leader was a brunette with twin tails and a sword secured to her waist. The young girl's eyes panned over to the devils for an instant before focusing ahead once more. And finally sitting on the other side of the room was the Governor General of the Fallen Angels, Azazel. The mix-haired man was lounging back in his seat, nursing a beer before his eyes peeked open to see the new arrival of devils. They were also looking at him with mixed expressions, mostly spite and anger from Rias and Akino. He smirked and sent them a quick nod before downing his beverage. And of course behind him was
Valley. The White Dragon Emperor opened his eyes from against the opposite wall and looked up towards those focused on him. He spotted Issei's nervous expression pointed his way and showed a coy smile before closing his eyes again and leaning against the wall. Yep, just as charming as ever. You okay? Naruto whispered to Xenovia when he saw the usually unflappable girl show a conflicted expression towards Michael's end of the room. Something bothering you?
No just. The blue-haired girl sighed and showed a sad smile. That's right. You weren't here when I first arrived in this town. Remember how I was sent here on a mission to recover the pieces of Excalibur? Naruto nodded as Xenovia looked over to the girl again. She's the person I came with to find them. She was my partner, Irina Shido. We didn't leave on good terms when I was excommunicated and changed into a devil. She thinks I betrayed her and the church. Why don't you explain what happened? That would mean telling her the truth. And Irina is even more devout than I am. Zenobia said sadly as she looked down. If she heard what I knew, it would destroy her. So if she can stay devout and needs to be angry at me to do it, I don't think I mind.
She minded. He could tell clearly by the expression on her face that she cared a lot.
So, if we're done with all the waiting and awkward silence, how about we get started? Azazel was the first to speak up with a casual, jovial tone despite the place and circumstance. Since this seems like the perfect occasion, why don't we go around the room and introduce everyone, with one interesting fact about yourself?
If they didn't scowl, they were unamused. That was every expression aimed towards the Governor General. Even Valley didn't find it funny. See? Now we're all peeved. That's way better than all the silent tension and worry that filled the air a second ago. He chuckled, man, I'm good.
Okay. Sirzek sighed and took control of the situation before it could derail any further. Before Azazel attempts and quite honestly fails to lighten up the situation any further, I would just like to thank you all for coming here today for this meeting. There's quite a lot to discuss, so if we can get started, we can address everything of concern.
Okie dokie. Of course. I warmed them up for you. You're welcome. Well then, I suppose if we want to start this meeting, we need to begin with the recent incident that happened just a few days prior with the fallen angel, Kokabiel, that made this necessary. The red-haired Lucifer looked over his shoulder. Rias, Sona-kun, if you'd please. Devil, H, how do you think things are going up there? It's fine. They said their goal was peace. Hopefully by the end of it they'll have reached their goal. Why yeah, but think about all the movies and shows where groups come together for peace talks but things end badly. The Dampier started to tremble with the game controller shaking in his hands. What if they get blown up? They would have noticed a bomb. What if someone gets sniped from across the street and it starts a war? We're in a barrier. No one is shooting anybody from across the street. What if they get invited to a wedding and then they go but they find out it was just a ploy to kill them all and the pregnant lady gets stabbed and Issei Senpei gets gutted and Bucko gets her throat cut and then they all die and I start crying under my covers again.
We seriously need to control what you're watching from overseas. Kaneko said. Calm down, Gaia-kun. They have things under control. Lucifer-sama and Leviathan-sama are overseeing things with the angel and fallen angel leaders. They'll protect Bucho and the others. Just stay calm and focus on something else. What else do you want to talk about?
Gasper titled his head in thought. Oh, when did you start liking Naruto-senpai? The little rook stilled and the game paused. Gasper nervously looked between his best friend and the screen several times before muttering, Kei Kaneko-chan? What did you say, why your name, before that? I asked when you started liking Naruto-senpai. Gasper elaborated, I didn't notice it at first but you seem a lot happier when he's around you.
You stick a little closer to his side. You're actually the one that strikes up a conversation with him, which is totally crazy considering you like to stay quiet. But I think the thing that tipped me off most was when he ruffled your hair and you actually leaned into his hand when he did it. Oh, you were so cute, Kaneko-chan. I couldn't handle. Gasper paused and paled. Kei Kaneko-chan, my character is already dead.
I noticed. So you don't have to keep preforming a 999 hit combo on him. Looks like your character got off easier than you will. The white-haired girl landed the last hit and reduced Gasper's fighter to a fine mushy paste that splashed against the screen in the form of a grotesque KO. Gasper gulped. I didn't even realize you could do that in Street Fighter.
You can't. I can. I did. And I will if you bring this topic up again. Kaneko said threateningly as her fellow freshman cowered and ducked into his box. With Gasper's vision now hampered by the space of his cardboard domain, Kaneko finally let the light pink hue take over her cheeks. She pouted and placed her controller down. Just forget about it, Gaia-kun. It doesn't really mean anything in the long term. Whatever I think I'm feeling, it'll fade soon enough.
And no, Gasper burst from his box and shook his head. Don't talk like that, Kaneko-chan. You have to try and give your feelings a shot. If you don't, you'll always regret it and feel unfulfilled. It's better to try and get rejected than never try at all. How would you know? I don't. But that's what all the anime say.
Of course they do. Kenko sighed. Gaia-kun, Naruto-senpai has Bucho. And I've seen the way they look at each other. How much she has done for him, and how much he would be willing to do for her. If I did have feelings, purely hypothetical feelings, she elaborated before she looked down with a slightly sad expression, I'd rather they just disappear eventually than try and get shot down immediately.
Why yeah, I guess it sounds harder when you put it like that. Gasper conceded before looking at his friends, but you don't know that he would do that. The little rook squirmed in her seat as the conversation had made her suitably uncomfortable. Luckily a creaking sound got their attention and made Gasper squeak in fear. What was that?
Maybe your wedding idea is actually going underway. The bishop whimpered as Kaneko was amused by his response, but hopefully if that does happen then Bucho can return to us as a decaying corpse bent solely on revenge and retribution against those that had killed her.
Huh? Seriously Gya-kun. Read more. But suddenly the door to the clubroom violently blew open with a gust of fire rushing in.
Gasper screamed and hid in his box as Kaneko immediately jumped to her feet at the ready for whatever was coming. Was one of the factions actually taking the opportunity to attack during the treaty? However, when the smoke vanished and she saw the figures within, she saw busty women in long robes standing on magic circles and with no discernible wings coming from their backs, humans. That's as correct. We are humans, but not just any humans. Something much more. One of them spoke as they slowly floated in. We are humans that deconstruct and reconstruct the structures of your devil magic and holy power to create magic all our own. We are magicians. Yeah, I figured that from the magician cloaks and magician magic you're using. Thanks for the long-winded explanation. Kaneko stoically snarked before shooing them away. I don't mean to be rude, but if you don't mind, we really need you to leave. You see, we are in the middle of a very special function at the moment and you might ruin it.
We are here for the vampire. The magician interrupted. Don't bother trying to hide him as our sensors have already located him in this room. We require his awesome power, so if you would be so kind as to hand him over, we shall be benevolent and let you go.
I'm not trying to hide him. He's in the box. Kaneko pointed to the cardboard box and the occupant inside it that squealed at the attention he was getting, but I don't see why you would want him since he doesn't have a great power to use. He's actually kinda useless.
Kaneko-chan, I know I brought up a sore topic earlier, but now you're just being spiteful. We don't expect you to understand how we can utilize him. The magicians extended their hands. Just hand him over.
Okay, catch. The magicians immediately created magic circles to block against the couch thrown towards them at blinding speeds. The furniture shattered easily on impact, but it was merely a distraction as Kaneko went flying past the floating magicians with the cardboard box rested on her shoulder. A few magic blasts followed after them as she sped down the hallway. Are you okay, Gaia-kun?
Why yeah, just a little rattled. He sounded much more frightened than he had said, but he was doing his best to keep his fear contained before looking down. What about you, Kaneko-chan?
They hit me a few times, but it's nothing I can't handle. The bishop gasped and looked down to see the back of her shirt was burnt away and revealed a slightly burnt back as well. Kaneko seemed to take it in stride as she looked out the window to see a huge squadron of devils, angels, and fallen angels still littering the skies. It doesn't look like anyone let them in to begin a surprise attack. Then who was it? Kaneko-chan. Kaneko threw the box up and deftly avoided the magic blasts coming her way. She caught the box again and saw another squad of magicians coming their way from the other end of the hall. She looked back and saw the other intruders making their way towards her before she headed for the stairs. Hold on, Gaia-kun. Hold on to, Aya. Kaneko leapt off the stairs and dropped through the middle of the stairwell that headed straight for the ground floor. Just before they hit the ground, Kaneko grabbed the banister of the stairwell to halt their descent, tearing out the wood and then dropping down safely before sprinting for the door again. The damp peer whined inside his box. Kaneko-chan, you really need to give a better warning than that. Kaneko-chan. Gasper slowly peeked his head out when he noticed they had stopped moving and went pale when he saw another group of magicians come phasing through the door to block their exit. He panicked and looked back to see the magicians from earlier floating down from the staircase as well to block their way back.
They were surrounded. Now, shall you make the smart move, or will we have to hurt you both? Devil. Afterwards the pieces of Excalibur were returned to the church, Kokebiel was detained, and the damages done to the school were fixed by the next day.
Sona finished. The injuries Rias Grimori and her peerage suffered as well as Zenobia Quarta who still worked for the church at the time were healed over the course of the night and the matter was solved before it could escalate exponentially. The Citri heiress bowed her head. If you wish for any further details we may have skipped then you can read about them in our report.
Sirzex nodded. That'll be all girls. Thank you.
So Tan, you were so good. You're such a great speaker. Sarafal whispered loudly and gushed over her little sister's good work. Sona's cheeks brightened and her eyes twitched before she sighed and stepped back to the wall. Rias gave her friend an empathetic pat on the back before rejoining her peerage.
So all jokes and jabbing aside, I think this should be plainly stated. Azazel said before giving a grateful nod to the young devils. Thank you for stopping Kokabiel's plans and putting him down before it was too late. Ria's peeved expression never faltered as she continued to glare at the Governor-General. Azazel seemed to just take it in stride and sit back in his chair. You can be assured that he will be spending the next few millennia in lockup before anyone even considers letting him see sunlight again. While justice being dealt is good news to hear, the fact that you were in the town at the same time as Kokabiel attempted to attack it is quite suspicious.
True, we were in town at the same time, but for completely different reasons. Azazel calmly explained, he was here to wipe out everyone and start a war between the three of us that would raise the planet and bring all of our homes into chaos. I was on vacation. He casually answered before peeking one eye open, and also I had an interest in this town.
That's another thing we need to bring up. Sirzex stared down his fellow leader. You abducted Naruto-kun from his living quarters and kept him locked away for a period of time. Care to explain that to us? Azazel shrugged. I didn't mean to abduct or keep him away. I actually came to meet him so that we could talk. But things escalated when he started fighting. He held up his hands, and as hard as it is to believe, he attacked first. Rias, Sona, Akano, and Issei looked at him accusingly as the others looked curious. The blonde gulped and scratched his cheek as he refused to meet their eyes.
I understand that isn't enough to clear me completely of blame, but I did return him to his peerage with a sacred gear. And I sent the Hakuryuko to collect Kokabiel so he could be properly punished. Azazel pointed back to the young man behind him who made no effort to respond. I wasn't here to assist Kokabiel with his master plan. I was here to meet the boy from another universe that had finally started to show some potential.
Fine, but did you not think to check up on your subordinate while he plotted to destroy this town and stop him? Quite an oversight in my opinion. It wasn't like he was keeping me up to date about his plans and schemes. Azazel countered before an amused look crossed his face. Plus if I remember correctly, I'm not the only person at this table where the accusation of oversight and negligence can be thrown. The expressions on the others' faces fell before he sighed and sat up in his chair. Let's face it and get to the matter at hand.
Our stalemate has dragged on for far too long, and there are groups on every side that are becoming anxious. Cabals within the church that scheme privately and prepare terrible experiments. Devils running away and abandoning their peerages to gallivant and slay any enemy they desire. And even high-ranking members of my own Grigori planning for full-scale war. Let's face it, this era of pseudo-peace is coming to an end. So what do you suggest we do? Make it official. Declare peace and unity between all of the factions once and for all. Azazel offered with skeptical and wary expressions between all of them. He sighed, okay, what is it this time?
That's a very large step to make so suddenly. Sirzex answered. Why are we bringing this prospect up only now? Because it's only now when many of us have something to lose or other aspects we believe we need to focus on. I'm sure many of us have dug enough graves and had to say goodbye to too many of our comrades to want to do that anymore. The older members in the room showed complicated expressions. God is dead. The legions of devils, angels, and fallen angels that we used to command and fight with have been thinned out. The war we waged against each other so long ago has been lost to time. The only reason we still bother antagonizing each other or not give into peace is deep-seated feelings of anger and distaste for the other sides. But when the alternative is a never-ending war, doesn't putting aside our differences and trying to change things for the better sound like the most rational move? Zenobia blinked in surprise and looked over in panic towards Irina. She expected her fellow swordswoman to look utterly broken by the fact she had just learned about God's death, but she just looked saddened and depressed. Had she already been told? You said now because only now do we have something to lose, Michael reiterated. What did you mean? That should be obvious. Azazel waved his hand around the room, these kids. The leaders and younger generation watching around them all looked confused before the fallen angel continued. This little maniac behind me loves nothing more than to fight and battle strong opponents.
It's what he lives for. I'd call him an adrenaline junkie, but even those people would say what he wants is just too crazy. Michael, that little lady behind you has probably completed a plethora of scary missions and objectives that would cause most grown men to mess themselves. Irina blushed at the wording while Michael gave a slight shrug of agreement. Anita even mentioned what the young devils have had to endure and stop just recently. What's your point, Azazel? I mean, they've already had to undergo great trials and troubles. Azazel's eyes panned over the room before landing on a pair of blue orbs, but none of their eyes look as heavy as his.
Naruto blinked in surprise as eyes turned to him. His eyes lowered as Azazel continued. He told me before he came to our world, he had come from a war that had ravaged his land and people. It had only been going on for a few days, but the body count was already staggering and it would have only gotten worse. That's what war is. That's what we all know it to be. What he has experienced that none of the other kids here have is the effort of trying to do everything you can, the failure of realizing it wasn't enough, the compromise of doing what you could instead, and the loss that still followed it. If we don't do something, all of our children are going to start carrying the same burdens we did when we fought. Are any of you ready for that? Sirzex merely narrowed his eyes as Serafal and Michael both looked worried at the idea of their followers going through the same thing they did.
Even Grafia looked tempted at the offer of their fights no longer passing on to the next generation. We have younger generations looking to us for guidance. A leading hand. We can keep letting them decide for themselves and allow the hate and spite continue to pass on. Or we can try something new. Something harder. Something we don't know will work, but had to be better than waiting for war.
The room went silent as they considered Azazel's proposal. Serafal asked, "What would we do after we made peace?" Azazel just shrugged. "Anything. Whatever we want. I'm sure there's bound to be some kind of benefit if we stopped focusing on fighting each other and utilized our resources on other matters."
Michael, he addressed the Archangel, you can focus more on your followers and perfecting the sacred gear system. Let the devout and penitent do whatever it is the devout and penitent do. Serafal, with all the fighting done, your little sister can focus on conceiving ways to avoid your overbearing and honestly kinda creepy obsession with her.
Peeved. Shows what you know, Azazel-chan. Serafal scoffed and laughed condescendingly. So Tan adores me. She loves when I show her affection. What Serafal didn't see right behind her was the young sea tree devil actually taking what he said into consideration. And
think about the burden that would be lifted off your sister's shoulders, Sirzex. Azazel offered before the man's smirk became just a little too coy. I bet if we decided on peace she could finally get around to playing with her boy toy. With all the preparations we've had recently, I'm sure there have been a few cases where things were getting all hot and steamy but they got interrupted before it got good. Maybe now they can finally go ahead and seal the deal.
He. Sirzex chuckled softly and shook his head. That's quite a leap, Azazel. But Rias wouldn't try and do anything with Naruto-kun so early in their relationship. They've barely even started going out, isn't that right, Ri? When Sirzex looked back, it was to see his sister with a hand rubbing the bridge of her nose and a bright red color to her ears and cheeks. Naruto also looked guilty and stared up at the ceiling to avoid eye contact. There, not all girls can be cute little babies like my Sotan forever. Serafal attempted and failed to console her frozen friend as Grafia rolled her eyes. Rias pulled her hand away from her face and glared at the fallen angel despite her embarrassed hue. She growled, "How did you know?" Two kids starting a relationship, one a member of a devil clan renowned for their abundance of love and the other a hormonal teenage boy with a smoking hot girlfriend?
This ain't a rom-com manga, sweetie. You two aren't keeping it age appropriate for long, you're trying to go straight to red light district theater levels. He shrugged, plus your expressions gave it away. I've seen that hot and bothered look on girls who just want to jump bones. Plus the kid looks like the classic victim of excessive cock block. Ha, I bet you got a nice pair of blue clackers down there, am I right? Naruto ground his teeth together and aimed his spiteful glare on the older man. But when he took a moment he looked around and saw members of the peerage looking at him and Rias. Except for Zenobia, who was looking at his crotch curiously. He's lying. In case everyone hasn't noticed, he loves messing with people. I mean, look how broken Searsex is. He motioned to the Lucifer, who still looked like he had crashed and failed to reboot properly. We haven't done anything.
Well, actually, Naruto swiped his arm down and forced his sacred gear to disappear. Done. Nothing.
Alright. Michael nodded. In the interest of keeping sanity and perhaps stalling a complete mental breakdown from occurring, the redhead Mao finally seemed to be finding his composure again in time to rejoin the talk. What does ending the war entail for you exactly, Azazel?
Tons of shit. He responded immediately. I've got so many TV shows to catch up on that I'm never gonna get around to if I have to bother considering a war breaking out. Some experiments that I've had on the shelf for far too long. A couple of lady friends are expecting visits and dates from me soon.
He wriggled his eyebrows for emphasis. Plus, this kid came to our world through the dimensional gap in a parallel world inhabited by ninjas. I'd be out of my fucking mind to not look into that a little more. Plus, in case you haven't noticed yet, the two heavenly dragons have been in the same room with us this entire time, and we haven't had to run for the hills to avoid a fight. If this isn't the age of miracles and new experiences, I just don't know what is. I almost forgot that we have both heavenly dragons here with us on such an auspicious occasion. Michael looked between the two young Longinus wielders. Issei flinched at the attention while Valley didn't even look bothered by the looks he got. The Archangel turned towards the silver-haired boy. How about you, young man? What is your opinion on the war and peace effort? Honestly, I really don't care about this. Valley bluntly stated with a cocksure smirk and a shrug of his shoulder. All these talks of politics and futures are so dull, I'm just barely staying awake. I'm only interested in fighting strong people. War. No war. Whatever helps me get around to fighting, I'll take it. The only reason I'm not trying to start a fight with anyone in this room right now is because Azazel asked me not to.
And also with a very generous bribe of a delicious ramen recipe I found. Don't forget that. That too. So that's my opinion. Valley looked across the room and smirked when his target flinched under his gaze. What about you, Issei Hyodo? What's your stake in all this?
Oh wow, am I seriously being asked about whether we should continue a war or not? The perverted brunette pointed at himself in disbelief before scratching the back of his head. Well, I mean, if we can avoid war, then I guess we should. It would be better if we weren't all fighting all the time, right? The Security raises some good points. Peace is best. We get to do more fun things in peace. Issei Hyodo, you know that if we were in a period of peace, Azazel smiled and started wriggling his fingers, you can focus more on the ladies of your dreams and developing some techniques.
Issei's eyes widened before he started putting a finger between a hole he made with his thumb and index. Azazel raised his eyebrows and started bouncing in his chair. Issei giggled pervertedly and huffed like a panting dog. Azazel smirked and slowly slid a hand down his fist and forearm before letting his hand spread out completely. Everyone in the room watched in silence as the two acted out their silent fantasy. Naruto grimaced. Someone. Anyone. Make them stop. Quite. Azazel. Michael got the fallen angel's attention just as he started wildly flicking his tongue in between his index and middle fingers. The Archangel shook his head before turning to the mixed-haired man. What you offered about peace is
intriguing. And I do agree with you that if we don't want this aggressive mindset to continue being passed down to the next generation, that we must work together for this peace. But as you suggested, there are groups within each faction that will take up a banner of war if they believe they are doing right by their people. What can we assure that my people, their people, and your people won't try to instigate another fight? We work with each other. Azazel stated, this peace isn't going to last if we simply say we'll stop fighting and do nothing else. We work together and do what we can to create bridges. Mend wounds. It's gonna be long and hard work we have ahead of us, don't expect any easy days in the future.
Azazel, besides, how am I gonna get to do all the crap on my bucket list if I have to just trust shit doesn't go sideways? He cackled and waved his hands. No thank you. Naruto sighed and shook his head, and for a second there I almost thought he had good in him. Now, don't be disheartened. Rias whispered. Just let him talk and we can be rid of him. Suddenly the whole room felt a jolt of energy run through and rush over them like a powerful wave. Their eyes widened and their breath nearly stopped as the room took on a darker tint. UWAHHH, Kurama yelled through the sacred gear that suddenly appeared on Naruto's arm. The fox coughed, Oh, that tingled. What the hell was that? Well, I think we might just be in the middle of time suddenly coming to a halt. Azazel noted as he looked around to see several people in the room had been frozen completely in place.
Out of all people gathered together for the meeting, only 10 remained that could move in the sudden freeze. Yuto, Zenobia, and Irina all had their swords drawn and glowing with aura powerful enough to protect them. Remote Looper, Boosted Gear, and Divine Dividing had all emerged on the bodies of their wielders in response to the sudden change. The leaders stood up and looked around. Looks like only those of us with exceptional power are still able to move. Rias. Naruto yelled in panic as he looked to the woman that stood by his side. She was frozen mid-sentence and showed no reaction when he called her name and waved his hand over her eyes. She was really frozen. He closed his eyes and took a sharp breath before looking back at the leaders. How did this happen? What's doing this?
Time is frozen. I have to imagine there's only one person capable of doing that here so effectively, Sirsex said. It's Gasper-kun. His sacred gear is causing this to happen. Gasper can't do this, Issei argued, he isn't strong enough. Issei-kun is right. Yuto nodded and lowered his demonic holy sword to his side. Gasper-kun barely had any control over his sacred gear even after all our training. He couldn't do this. Not consciously. Azazel spoke up, but under circumstances. High stress. Even torture, his sacred gear could be capable of doing this. The remaining members of the Orc looked horrified at the idea. Zenobia narrowed her eyes, so Gasper and Kaneko have both been apprehended by whoever did this. Magicians. Serafal said, it was magicians that are doing this. How do you know? She simply pointed out the window in response to their query. The remaining members of the meeting walked up and looked outside to see the same tint of red had encompassed the entire schoolyard they had cleared for the meeting. All the devils, angels, and fallen angels put on guard duty outside had been rendered immobile by Gasper's freeze. And finally a massive magic circle had opened in the sky as nearly 100 robed figures slowly came dropping out of it. They muttered some quiet spells before firing off blasts of magic that hit the prone guards in the air and teleported them far away from that place. See? Told you it was magicians. And it looks like they've come to corner us during our meeting. Michael spoke. They're sending all of our guards away and trapping us in a single location. An assassination attempt? Probably. Azazel chuckled as a magic circle emerged just outside their window to defend them against the onslaught of magic attacks being hurled at them. And here we were thinking we had to worry about each other making a move like this. Never mind that shit. Issei yelled and whipped his arm out to the chaos happening outside. How the hell are we supposed to deal with this? If Rias wasn't frozen, I'd suggest you could use castling to go to Gasper-kun's side quicker and save him. But unfortunately that's an impossibility at the moment. Sirsex said grimly, we need to stop him now before his powers are enhanced further or he goes out of control. It's only a matter of time before his freeze ability affects us, and if that happens then we'll have no way of defending ourselves. So he needs to be stopped, huh? Valley finally spoke up and stood off the wall with the same bored expression on his face. Well, how about I just blow up the building he's being held in? Magicians are gone. Threat nullified. And you all are safe. Seems easy to me. No, Naruto shook his head, that wouldn't work. Oh, and why not? Because the moment you try to hurt Gasper and Kaneko, we kill you. Valley looked between Naruto, Issei, Zenobia, and Yuto. Their glares focused on him firmly and didn't move for an instant. He smiled, oh? Valley. Be nice. You can't kill the subordinates of our hosts just because it's easy. You need to be a little more hospitable than that. Azazel turned to his charge before pointing out the window. If you're feeling antsy and itching for a fight, why not go out there and take care of our uninvited guests? I'm sure there's some entertainment to be had in playing with them. Valley hummed before shrugging and stepping up to the window. Might as well. Might be interesting to see if these magicians have anything prepared for capturing a heavenly dragon. The silver-haired man opened the window and stepped out before jumping off the windowsill. His sacred gear came popping out of his back, white and blue wings that sent him flying up into the sky. The magicians turned in the air, aiming their attacks on the single man that came jumping into the fray.
For a moment they believed that he was simply suicidal and came out here to forfeit his life. But their confidence quickly withered away when they saw the young man become covered in a familiar shining white armor. The imposing figure shined like a radiant figure of destruction and absolute power, aura leaking off him in waves and wings spread out as energy seeped out of them.
Vanishing Dragon Balance Breaker, T the White Dragon Emperor.
How is he moving? Attack! Attack now! Magic attacks came flying in on the lone figure from every angle. Ice and fire and lightning and pure energy swarmed on the outnumbered armored man, but they never reached him. The powerful attacks coming from every side were blocked by the magic circles that appeared and faded away the instant the magicians' attacks were thwarted. Valley stayed floating in the same spot and watched the futile attempts to attack him fail against his defenses. Hee, is this all you have to offer? Valley, voice came out heavier and with enough boom to carry over the entire sky. It caused the magicians around him to pause and shake in fear before he closed his eyes and sighed. He unfolded his arms. Very well. Then I suppose it's my turn to attack.
Valley raised his hand and clenched his fist before slowly reopening it.
Hovering just in the palm of his hand was a shimmering ball of light that threatened to burst at any second. The white-clad armor threw his hand up into the air and watched the ball burst into bolts of lightning that shot out in every direction. It ran through the plethora of magicians that surrounded him and he watched as they fell. He felt more magic appear behind him and looked back to see even more magicians slipping from the magic circle in the sky ready to fight him.
Good. More practice. Yuto gulped, he's so strong.
Not just that. He's ruthless. Zenobia added as she watched from below as the figure clad in armor wiped out the magicians that filled the sky with no effort at all. It was hard to believe this was a man that Issei had to match one day in battle. Because what she had seen of Issei when he had used this form, and what she was witnessing of Valley doing in his was like day and night.
We should leave handling the magicians to him for now. He can handle them while we figure out another course of action. Sirzek said as he turned to the other leaders. We have to figure out some way to reach Gasper-kun and get his power under control.
Don't worry about that. They all looked over at Azazel as he leaned against the wall and looked out the window. I gave the security and ninja my special sacred gear bracelets. If they can get it on the Dampier, then it'll stop his sacred gear from going out of control and return everything to normal. We just have to trust them for now. Okay, and where are they exactly? Azazel pointed out the window. And when everyone looked outside, it was just in time to see two figures slip past the defenses they had erected to protect the building and run straight into the storm of lightning and magic blasts that rained down from above.
Naruto Senpai. Issei screamed as he jumped and ducked from the magic attacks that threatened to reduce him to ash. Couldn't we have come up with any idea better than this? Shut up and run. They need us right now. Why yeah, but this seems like a really dumb way to rescue them. I said shut up or you'll get zapped, alright.
Yuto and Zenobia stared out the window and watched their comrades scream and dash across the field to the old building. Zenobia blinked a few times before looking at her fellow knight. Wouldn't you and I have been better choices for getting there faster?
Yes, Yuto shook his head, but I doubt they're thinking straight with Kaneko-chan and Gasper-kun's well-being on the line.
So then, we'll leave the magicians to Valley and the Dampier situation to those two. And we can focus on more pressing matters. Azazel slipped his hands into his pockets and turned around to see what the other leaders had already determined was the next threat to focus on, like our uninvited guest.
Oh ho ho ho, and here I thought you wouldn't notice my presence. An orange magic circle appeared in the center of the room and another figure slowly started to emerge from out of it.
A tall, dark-skinned woman with long brown hair and large breasts came to appear in the room alongside the powerful leaders of the world. But even with the influential figures standing before her, she didn't seem intimidated in the slightest, although now that I think about it, it is better that I'm here. If we're talking about the fate of our races and you want a real devil's opinion, then war and slaughter is the only true option.
Kateria Leviathan. Sirzek stepped forward. Tell me, Kateria, what is a descendant of the original Leviathan Mao doing showing up here with us during such a convenient attack from an unknown group of terrorists?
Well, I thought that would be obvious, the pure-blooded devil said with a vicious smile. I came to kill the fake Maos that had tarnished the originals' names and assassinate the host of heaven and Governor General while I was at it. I might as well since you all are so tightly packed together. The devil flicked her head back before tapping her foot as the magic circle beneath her started to glow brightly. Goodbye, fakers. Devil. What was that sound? Probably the devil from the old Satan faction finally making her move. Once she's done eradicating the leaders, we'll be done here. Then we can take this child for ourselves and see how to better utilize his powers than just an assassination attempt. No. Gasper muttered with a shaky voice, taking a moment to stop in his silent screaming to struggle against his captors. His eyes continued to shine in their red light as he thrashed around helplessly in the magic constraints that bound him in the air. He could feel his strength fading as his sacred gear was forcefully used to freeze the entire area. He closed his eyes but knew that wasn't going to stop the effect. If Bucho and the others get hurt because. It's too late to be worried about that, boy. One magician said with a coy smile, your king, peerage, and all the leaders are already dead. Your ability was perfect for stopping them in their tracks. Be proud, lad. You helped annihilate some of the strongest people in the world. Don't count on it. The magician scowled and Gasper looked over to where Kaneko was being hung upside down by magic constraints that drained her of her strength. She had scuff marks and her clothes were ripped from resisting the magician's attacks as best she could, but even in her restraints she did not submit to her captors. She frowned. If you think they're dead, they're not. And if you think you've won, you're screwed.
Watch your mouth, little girl. One of the magicians threatened while raising her hand and summoned lightning from her palm. Unless you wish for another round of electrocution to shut you up. That's fine. Kaneko stoically responded, I'm bored just hanging here doing nothing. Kaneko-chan, stop. I don't want to hear you scream again. It's fine, Gia-kun. Kaneko reassured him. We might get hurt now but the others will come help us soon. We just have to wait until then. The magicians looked between each other skeptically before taking a step closer to Kaneko. She raised the electricity up towards the petite rook's face. Where in the world did you get such childish hopefulness and stubbornness? Some people I know helped show me I should keep fighting as long as I am able. You must have some truly terrible influences, you have no idea. Just before the hand could touch Kaneko and send a shock through her body, the doors to the room came breaking off their hinges. The magicians immediately turned to the sudden intruder and went on the defensive by summoning a myriad of spells. The terrorists narrowed their eyes as Kaneko's softened and Gasper's started to water. And who the fuck are you people supposed to be? Naruto snarled as he stood up in the doorway and clenched his fists with unbridled anger when he saw his juniors strung up on the other side of the room. He grit his teeth. I swear if you hurt either of them, I will break every bone in your. Silence. A bolt of lightning shot right through Naruto's heart and silenced him in an instant. Gasper and Kaneko felt their hopes shatter in an instant as the magicians cackled. If you're going to attack from the front, you shouldn't waste your time talking and threatening us. Well said. Naruto popped and filled the whole room with a wave of smoke. The magicians coughed and swiped it out of their faces before they could choke anymore. But they were too distracted by the sudden smokescreen that they didn't see the figure through the cloud that came flying in. The blonde pond dropped in between the magicians and threw kicks out that rattled their brains and knocked them off their feet. You bastard. Didrag. Ascalon. Issei charged in as well, brandishing the new sword fused to his sacred gear and slashing several magicians across the chest. The Red Dragon Emperor swung his sword down to the side and roared, Don't you dare touch Yusuke or Kaneko-chan, you bitches. Why you damn devils. Only one magician remained after the surprise attack from the two pawns. She gathered her magic in her hand and threw it out as lightning arched from her fingertips. Stop getting in our way. You lost that chance when you forced them to get involved. Naruto roared, charging forward and taking the brunt of the lightning attack before popping in another burst of smoke. The magician panicked and prepared her next spell, but the smoke quickly circled in at a single point in the cloud. Naruto came rushing out with a blue orb in hand and slammed it into the spellcaster's stomach. Rasengan. Gah! The magician went flying into the wall violently and slammed against it on impact, a grinding circular pattern in the stomach of her robe before falling to the ground. The magical seals that bound Gasper and Kaneko disappeared and left them falling to the ground. The young bishop looked up with tears in his eyes as his voice cracked with relief. Senpai. Hold on, Gasper. Issei pulled out the bracelet Azazel had given him and prepared to secure it around Gasper's arm. We'll get your sacred gear in check.
Kaneko flinched as she sat up, an ache through her muscles from when she was shocked as her strength suddenly came back to her. She opened and closed her fists a few times until the phantom sting started to fade completely. She lowered her eyes and muttered, "I'm sorry I wasn't able to stop them. I thought I could but I failed."
What are you talking about? You both are safe. That's what's important. That's a win. But if it was you, I bet you would have escaped. If it was me and I escaped, and that's a big if, then I probably would have broken just about everything possible in the process. I still failed. But did you give up? Never. Kaneko felt the familiar palm gently fall on her head and give her a supporting pat. She looked up at his smile. Then you should be proud of that. We're just glad you and Gasper are okay. Can you walk? She nodded. I'm fine. Want me to carry you? Shut up. She stood up and dusted herself down, hiding the pink flush on her pale cheeks. Jerk.
Naruto-senpai. Gasper came running up to him with tears of joy in his eyes. Issei followed behind him as the Dampier whimpered, Thank you for coming to save me with Issei-senpai. Is everyone okay? Did they get hurt because of me? Tell me Bucho and the others are safe.
They were fine the last time we saw them. Naruto said calmly to his panicking junior. They had Sirzex and the others watching out for them. We came here to grab you too. That was a good idea to distract them with the smoke. Issei praised Naruto before he quirked an eyebrow. But do your clones seriously pop after only one hit? Naruto glared. I didn't see you coming up with tactics to get in there. I know, and I'm not saying it wasn't a good idea. But when you think about a clone army, you think they should be as tough as you. If they can't even take one hit. Look, how about when you come up with a cloning technique that lets you create copies en masse, get their information back to you upon destruction, and with enough durability to withstand multiple hits, then you can come and bitch to me about my clones. Can you both stop bitching? Aren't we in the middle of a terrorist attack? Kaneko spoke up with a frown, getting both boys to grumble and hide their faces in shame for getting distracted. Bigger picture. Alright. Issei slammed his fist into his hand. We gotta get back to the others, now.
Devil. Faster. Rias said before her eyes widened in shock when she noticed Naruto had disappeared from in front of her. Her confusion and concern were raised even further when she looked around to see the room and most of the school had been destroyed and left in a pile of rubble. She looked around to see her peerage, Sona, and Tsubaki just as confused as she was. What happened?
Oh, Rias, you're back. That means they were successful.
Oh Oni-sama. Rias looked around at the barrier surrounding them being held up by Sirzex, Serafal, Grafia, and Michael. Yuto, Zenobia, and Irina were nervously looking up in the air as explosions filled the sky and stray attacks flew down to bounce off their shield. What is going on? A group of magicians infiltrated the barrier and invaded the school. Yuto explained. They captured Gasper-kun and used his scared gear to stop time around us. Only a few of us were still able to move when it happened. Naruto and Issei went to go save Gasper and Kaneko. Zenobia continued. The White Dragon Emperor is up there destroying the magician horde and the leaders are creating a barrier to protect us. And Azazel? They all pointed upwards as a massive explosion rang above them. Ahahahaha. I'm surprised, Governor General. The Leviathan cackled as she summoned dozens of magic circles with a single wave of her hand. Lightning and fire flew down like rain over the lone fallen angel as the devil continued to laugh at him. All this fighting and you haven't realized you're just wasting my time. Can't you see a useless effort when you're in the middle of one? My power, my lineage, and all of my attacks dwarf yours in comparison. You'd find peace faster just staying still and dying. Azazel chuckled to himself as he flew into the array of attacks falling down towards him. His cool and carefree demeanor remained even as he weaved his way through the countless attacks. He came out on the other side completely unscathed and dusted off his collar for good measure as he smiled at Kateria's irritated expression. It's true. All the original Leviathan power is really shining through right now, Kateria. But I can't help but notice you have a little extra kick in your attacks. Did you get a little boost from someone else before coming here? Kateria aimed her death glare on the scruffy man after he had realized her secret. Her eye twitched but she found her composure again and simply laughed at the fallen angel leader. I suppose I do have to praise your analytical abilities, if nothing else. I was sure that I could slaughter you and the rest with my basic powers, but I was persuaded to take a boost just in case. Kateria's eyes darkened as a powerful, menacing aura started to emanate from her form. How does it feel? My already incomparable power enhanced by a snake from Opus itself. Opus. Azazel repeated, and what stake does the infinite dragon god have in a meeting between the factions? Can't help but feel that this is really out of their playhouse to even bother thinking about. Might those silly little rumors and whispers about that Chaos Brigade actually be true? Yes, it is. Kateria cackled. We of the Chaos Brigade are shaking the world from its structure. First the supposed leaders. Then every mythology following that stands in our way. Whomever stands in the way of our desires will meet a swift and brutal end. And that all starts with you.
All I needed to hear. Azazel reached into his suit and grabbed hold of something before pulling it out. Kateria froze in surprise as the Governor-General raised the golden dagger with the shining purple jewel up into the air. The object started to shine brightly as Azazel's mocking voice yelled out to the devil, not happy with how things are.
Starting a little rebellion with all the other naughty little boys and girls you can find. Are you really gonna kill everyone that disagrees with you until you get what you want? Well, sorry to tell you, Ms. Leviathan, but I have to disagree, and I'm not going down so easily. You have a little boost. Enough to think you can wipe us all out. Well, I like how things are right now. And if you think you can stop us, I'm gonna stop you with my downfall dragon spear.
A bright golden light shined from the dagger and blinded everyone in the barrier. The light started to take shape around the fallen angel as the already tall and imposing man started to cut an even larger figure.
His body was covered in a bright gold armor, with several purple crystals adorned over the body of the armor. Azazel's 12 wings stretched from the back of the armor and he had a massive spear of light already in hand. Everyone looked at him in surprise as his voice came out at a booming volume from the armor. I know, right? Pretty fucking badass if I do say so myself. Took a little work and it isn't gonna last for long, but man do I look awesome.
What is that supposed to be? Kateria chuckled with a nervous, scared tinge in her tone.
She wasn't prepared for Azazel to pull out a secret weapon like that so close to the end of their attack. Kateria had expected to appear, scare and toy with the leaders and their little pets for a while, before ending it all in one fell swoop. But she still had the boost from Opus, Snake, and she still had more than enough power to spare. She cackled, I see you still love playing with sacred gears, don't you, Governor General? Well, if you think. Azazel disappeared in a burst of speed and dug his fist into the devil's stomach. Kateria's eyes nearly popped out of her head as she doubled over and spat up blood. She trembled in the air before weakly looking up to see Azazel's already raising his other arm in a fist. You talk too much. His fist came down on her back and sent her careening into the ground below. The Leviathan descendant slammed into the ground, immediately creating a crater around her body and webbing out in every direction. The beaten woman struggled on her hands and knees, her vision faltering as Azazel slowly lowered himself to the ground with folded arms. You know the difference between you and I, Kateria. We may both be getting a boost in power, but damn do I make mine work for me.
Why, you arrogant bastard? The devil woman seethed as she pushed herself up from the center of the crater. Your smug and pompous attitude is making me sick, as if you can act like you've already won. Considering you're saying that, then maybe I really should cut back a little. But you think this is it? Kateria waved her arm around to the last of the magicians and old devil faction that were being wiped out by Valley.
Even beaten, the woman continued to cackle like a hyena with a crazed look in her eyes. I came here to kill all of you. And that's what I'm going to do. Any means necessary. You think Opus, Snakes are our only ace in the hole. The Chaos Brigade has a slew of monsters and demons you can't even begin to fathom. But I'll give you a sneak peek on how we plan to take down this world. Watch, and engrave it into your memories, as the last thing you ever see. Kateria slammed her hand into the ground and summoned a magic circle beneath her. Azazel watched in surprise as the circle started to expand and stretch in size until it slipped under his feet and continued out in every direction. Searsx and the others in their defensive barrier looked down from above as the intricate circle took up almost the entire campus in size. At the very center, Kateria laughed and cheered, I win. I win.
But the circle disappeared and nothing changed. The Leviathan woman gawked and stared down in horror before she fell to her knees and started patting the ground desperately. Azazel titled his head, "Performance Issues." No, you fucking traitors. You told me they were ready. You told me that was the circle I needed. Well, it's clear you're pretty much broken, but I'm intrigued by this, Ace, you seem so confident in. Azazel stepped forward. If you tell us about them and the others members of your little group, I'll let you.
WRAAAAAHH. Kateria's mind snapped and she threw her hands out, multiple arms sprouting out of her body and swarming around Azazel before taking hold of his arm. She gripped it tightly as the spare hands started to aim magic circles at her enemy at point-blank range. Ha! If I'm going to die, I'm taking you with me. No. Azazel swung his hand down and sliced his arm off as it dropped to the floor. Kateria looked at it in shock before slowly looking down at the spear of light that pierced her chest. She toppled over dead as Azazel released his armor and grabbed the jewel from his broken dagger. But you can have my arm. Consider it a parting gift. He slid the jewel into his pocket before turning around with a smirk. Looks like you all made it just in time.
Gasper was cowering in fear behind Issei while Kaneko and Naruto looked over at the woman lying in a pool of her own blood. The blonde looked back at the fallen angel before pointing down. So you, need a little help with that? It's still bleeding. Like a lot. Kaneko watched the stream of blood steadily pouring out of Azazel's missing limb. Oh yeah, gotta fix that. Azazel nonchalantly stated before continuing like nothing had changed. Hey, looks like everyone else has finally come to join the party. Gasper, Kaneko, Rias called out as she came running over and quickly enveloped her, Bishop, and Rook, in a hug. She looked over them quickly. Gasper, have you been crying? Kaneko, you look tired. Did they hurt you? I swear I'll kill them?
I'm okay, Bucho. Me too. It was scary, but Issei-senpai and Naruto-senpai saved us just in time. Rias looked up at them with gratitude as both men simply smiled in return. Bucho, I'm sorry my ability caused you so much worry.
Stop talking like that. You're safe and sound. Everything else doesn't matter. I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it has been resolved. They looked back at Sirzex as he looked around the area. The magicians have been dealt with, the freeze has come to an end, and Kateria has stopped. We did it, Seraphald cheered with joy, quickly jumping on a protesting Sona and giving her a tight hug. Hooray for the good guys.
But there are still some questions to answer. Michael spoke up with narrowed eyes. The magicians breached our barrier. They are skilled, but I doubt they could have done something like that unless they knew the pattern and writing we used to enforce it. Plus they didn't break it down but slipped through it. That requires even more skilled magic, to not only invade this space but leave us trapped in it. And there's the matter of the Grimoire, Bishop too. Azazel added, the boy in question flinching and cowering behind Rias as he continued, I'm surprised they knew that he would be separated from the rest of us during the meeting, and that they could use the chance to capture him and use his power. Almost like they knew, like they were being told.
Azazel looked up to see Valley had disappeared from his place in the sky.
With a hefty sigh and rubbing the shoulder that now missed an arm, he looked at the other leaders. You all should be careful. Considering this Chaos Brigade had members from every faction looking to overthrow the powers in charge, we might all have conspirators in our midst. Be on your guards. If you're not, you might lose your. Azazel paused and looked down at his missing limb with a frown. Shit, I lost an arm.
About time that actually started to sink in. Seriously, this blows. There's gonna be a lot of ladies disappointed that I'm missing Lucky Lefty. All of the students grimaced at the image he put in their heads.
Xenovia. The blue-haired girl looked back to see Irina standing just a few feet away from her. The twin-tailed girl looked very anxious speaking to her old partner and struggled to lift her eyes up from the ground but finally did to look at Xenovia. See, can I talk to you? Xenovia was also sheepish getting to face her friend again after their icy departure just a few weeks earlier. She felt her hand go sweaty before a firm nudge to her arm pushed her forward. She looked back and saw Naruto encourage her with a small nod. Yes, Irina, I wanted to talk to you too. The former partners stepped off to the side to speak. Naruto smiled as he saw the awkward girl try to mend her friendship with her friend. Still can't help but get involved, can you? No, he could not. Devil, Naruto groaned as he sat at his table and rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. I'm glad yesterday is over.
That whole situation was so tense and stressful I think I lost sleep over it. Well, it's over now, and I think you handled it very well. Rias complimented as she came over to sit beside him and eat her breakfast as well. Considering how badly things could have turned out, it all finished rather peacefully. Never thought I'd get the chance to sit in on a peace treaty between devils, angels, and fallen angels. Lucky me. The whiskered pawn said with a chuckle before looking at his girlfriend. What about you? How do you feel about the war coming to an end?
Rias paused and lowered her chopsticks in thought. With a heavy sigh she shook her head. I'm surprised, to be honest. I never believed that this war would come to an end. I was sure the stalemate would last for centuries even from now. But to be alive and present as it came to an end and made peace was just unbelievable. It for the best that we don't fight with the angels and fallen angels anymore. Although, you don't wanna think about working with Azazel from now on, do you? Rias' frustrated pout was a clear enough answer as she huffed and crossed her arms. The young Grimoire heiress threw her nose up in thought of Azazel staying in Kuo for the foreseeable future. When it was decided that the town would be an important place for all three factions, Azazel offered to stay here and keep watch over it in case anything went wrong. Rias and Akino were less than enthused. It can't be that bad. He's smug. He infuriates me with every word he says. He kidnapped you and made me worry for days. He keeps bring up RP personal matters. Rias blushed at that one before she snarled, and not to mention bringing up his own. I didn't want to hear about how he lost his arm and can't do his patented triple shocker maneuver anymore. Yeah, I'm still working out the math on that one. Naruto scratched his head before smirking and poking her in the cheek. That elicited a cute squeak from the redhead as she jumped back and he smiled wider, but we don't gotta worry about him right now. Just enjoy your breakfast and appreciate the silence. He looked back to see Rias looking at him quietly. What is it?
Her hands gently came up and cupped his face as she looked into his eyes. After a few seconds of silence, a soft smile came to her face. I think they're wrong. Your eyes don't look so heavy. Not as much as they used to be. Oh, it happened again. Shut up, Kurama. Naruto snarled before smiling and leaning in towards Rias. She understood and leaned up as well. Yoo-hoo, neighbors, you in there? Their eyes blanked and their faces paled when they heard the voice knock at the door. No, hey you two. Good morning. Azazel greeted them with a smile. Glad to see you two are already awake. Some kids this day and age are still slumping around in their beds at a time like this. Why are you here? Rias didn't ask so much as see every word out of her mouth. The redhead looked like she would burst into flames at any moment while speaking with the fallen angel.
Oh, I just moved in last night. Since I'll be staying in Kuo for now, I thought it would be appropriate to find a place to live. This place seemed cheap but quaint. Azazel shrugged. The company is certainly pleasant though. That European guy is a great drinking buddy though. Didn't even stare at the missing lump. Azazel chuckled and patted the empty sleeve that hung from his shirt. So what about you two? Any morning rituals still to get through? Quote. Azazel looked between the glowering teens before he blinked. Oh shit, it happened again, didn't it? Wow, the universe must not want you two to ever get down and dirty. Haha, I guess even I'm just a tool in the great cosmic game. So Naruto, are you at Purple or Tyrian yet? Azazel. Rias growled, what do you want? Oh, right. I forgot to tell you that Valley is picking a fight with Issei Hyodo as we speak. I tried to contact him and make him stop before things escalate, but it's pretty clear he isn't listening to me anymore. So, that's happening right now.
Rias pushed the fallen angel aside and ran into her room to get dressed. Naruto ran back in and grabbed his clothes to come as well. He felt a pit of dread fill his belly as he imagined how that ruthless kid was trying to pick a fight with Issei. He tried to think of a way around it, but it was useless. Issei, he had no chance. Struggling, Azazel asked from his doorway, if it helps a quick rub, the chub usually does me good before something stressful. I hate you so much. Devil.
Come on, hurry. They're right ahead. Rias called out over the rushing wind as she sped through the air as fast as she possibly could. Her hair and clothes whipped around wildly as her wings flapped and sent her rocketing forward to her destination. Panic filled her chest and she feared for every moment her pawn was fending for himself before she looked back. Azazel, are you certain your barrier is holding? Pretty sure. I mean this ain't the first time Valleys jumped in guns blazing and tore shit up. The fallen angel sailed behind her at the same speeds but with far less urgency in his demeanor. His empty sleeve flapped about as he gave an amused chuckle. You should have seen this one time when he was just a kid and he started getting used to his power and used it all the time. Oh man, there were some towns to evacuate and people's memories to re-engineer.
Rias bit her lip in worry before looking back. Naruto, can you please hurry up? We're wasting time.
The flying at high speeds thing is still something I'm getting used to. Naruto called out from behind them, his path less certain and his wings accidentally folding on the wind currents that passed over them. Compared to the other two flying with him, he clearly had the least natural ability with his wings. Just go ahead, Rias. I promise to catch up. Get there and help them. Rias looked back with a conflicted expression before giving a firm nod and darting through the air. Naruto watched her disappear over the town and into the forest and greenery. He grit his teeth and looked back at his wings, trying to eyeball the problem and straighten them out when he could. This is really not the time for the rookie moves. Gotta get my shit together.
Oh no, looks like you need to put in some effort to better grasp this new talent of yours. What a shame. Don't get snarky, you overgrown hairball. Naruto bit back at the voice emanating from remote Looper as he concentrated on his flying. I'm used to hard work and learning to do things. Unlike you, stuff like this doesn't completely blow my mind.
Fuck you. Lover spat. Naruto scowled at Azazel's teasing expression as the fallen angel slowed his acceleration and came to a steady pace by his side. When he did, the mixed-haired man grimaced and bemoaned, oh, this is weird. Never flown this slow before. It's like I'm trying to keep up with a toddler and I have to keep his pace by twisting my feet at a right angle and slowly drag my feet forward.
You looking to twist your leg at an awful angle? Naruto seethed with a pulsating vein in his brow. I'm more than happy to assist with that.
Oh good, you still got your biting tongue. The Governor General chuckled. You may fly like a bird that's had its wings clipped and had some bad brain surgery, but at least you've still got that tongue. Azazel slapped him on the back with his one arm hard enough that Naruto almost went off course. I'm sure the ruined princess will really come to appreciate that baby somewhere down the road. In more ways than one, hopefully. It took a second for Azazel's innuendo to translate, but when it did, Naruto's cheeks heated up in mortification. The fallen angel chuckled at his response before leaning in. Hey, I gotta ask, how are the showers and services at this place we're staying in now? I mean, does the landlord fix the joint up? Is there hot water? Is there enough room in the showers for me and a few lovely friends to clean the nasty sin off our bodies after some fun?
Wait, the blonde eyeballed the man suspiciously. Did you seriously just move in because me and Rias were there? Did you not check it out beforehand? Because that place is 2 levels below the shit at rock bottom. Seriously? Azazel deflated. I thought you both stayed there because it was actually better than it appeared. Nope. Worst of the worst. I stayed there because it was dirt cheap and I saved the money. Naruto shrugged, and Rias moved in because, well, I think she didn't like being lonely.
That girl, Azazel pointed ahead at the red dot in their view that was Rias, moved from whatever extravagant home she lived in to be in the gutter with you. The whiskered devil was silent for a moment before giving an unsure shrug. Azazel sighed, kid, when the time comes, you better treat that girl like a goddess.
I will. No, I mean seriously. Hand and foot. Every request. Your hands better learn every technique they need and that tongue better be ready for anything. Seriously, after settling for a guy like you, the least you can do is make sure she hits that sweet spot each and every time. What are you talking about? And what do you mean settle? She didn't settle for me. Meh, kinda have to agree with the crow. Rias seems like far too nice a young lady for you. See, even the underage fox agrees with me. Shut up, and Kurama, when did you start caring about people enough to make comments like that? Like I said, when you're asleep. You're like a log that wakes up the dead. Poor girl. Okay, I'm done listening to the disembodied voice of the fox that still struggles to train, or the dumb one-armed bastard that decided to sleep in an oversized roach motel because he wanted to hang out with the cool kids. Damn, it was joke. I know, right? Can't even take a joke.
Naruto let out a low growl at their ridiculing. He stopped short of biting their heads off when he saw the massive barrier located outside of Kuos limits. He assumed that it must have been protected by normal people's sight because there was no way anyone wasn't gonna throw a fit at the giant dome encompassing so much space. He slowly descended back towards the ground and landed by Rias, sighed as she stared at the barrier impatiently. Are you okay?
No, I want to see for myself that Issei and Asia are okay. Her anxiety was clear from how jittery she was and how fast she spoke. She looked back at the landing fallen angel. Azazel, open a doorway for us right now.
All right. The fallen angel took his time to step up to the barrier alongside them before giving them a cautious look, but were about to bear witness to a battle between this generation's White Dragon and Red Dragon Emperors. Few people through the ages have witnessed such a battle close up, and even fewer have returned to tell the tale. If you truly wish to proceed.
Azazel's answer came in the form of a palm illuminated by the dark light of Ria's destruction as she leveled an impatient, unamused glare at the fallen angel.
Well shit, I guess that's my answer. He casually chuckled, not even intimidated by her threat as he waved his hand and created a small opening in the dome for them to enter. Rias did not hesitate to rush in, and Naruto was quick to follow in case there was any danger she wasn't prepared for.
He realized when he entered he was not prepared for the scope of this battle either.
Devil. Dragon shot. Issei roared at the top of his lungs, clad in his red armor, as the small green orb disappeared into his fist before being released with his punch, a massive ray of demonic power barreling through the landscape and eradicating everything in its path. Unfortunately, Issei's target was not in its line of destruction.
Pathetic. Issei Hyodo. Valley's voice echoed through the area as he vanished in a burst of speed so rapidly that he disappeared from sight. Flashes of white armor appeared in the sky, and it seemed like Valley was creating copies of himself solely from his speed before they vanished altogether. The giant figure clad in glistening white armor appeared behind Issei and struck him between the shoulder and neck with a spinning kick.
The red dragon let out a pained cry as he went careening into the ground below, and the white dragon hovered in the air with his glowing blue wings. I suppose my suspicions about you were correct. You're much too weak to be my rival. I suggest you start putting in a little more effort, or else I'll just kill you and pass on the boosted gear to the next recipient. Although I'll have to wait another few years until they're ready, and I'm not particularly patient, so now's the time to buckle down.
Why you? Issei forced himself back up on his hands and knees as he gasped for breath in sweet relief. You talk too fucking much, asshole. Hey partner, if I still had guts they would be twisting and reeling right now with what I'm about to say, but he's right. We need to pull something big to get the drop on them. Yeah, I know Diedrich, but in case you haven't noticed, I don't got a lot to work with. He wasn't expecting to start the day off with a battle to the death with his apparent eternal rival.
But the moment he opened the door to his house, he found Valley standing at his door waiting for him. Apparently he was going to go away for a while and be very busy, which Issei had no problem with as long as he was far away from him, but the silver-haired man wasn't ready to leave just yet. Not until he got a load of what his future rival had to offer in the way of entertainment. Issei was quick to answer with a clear and resounding fuck off.
Valley's retort was a not-so-subtle threat to blow up his home and kill Asia, his mother, and his father. Issei barely stopped himself from decking the other heavenly dragon across the face and tempting whatever terrible consequence may come in retaliation.
Asia quickly came to his side when she noticed him standing in the doorway and gasped when she spotted Valley standing outside. And whether brave or foolish, the little nun stepped in between them and defiantly told Valley she wouldn't let him hurt her new family. Valley silently accepted her determination and quickly sent a look towards Issei in a wordless promise of who would be hurt first. That's when Azazel appeared and tried to mediate the situation by calming Valley down. However, the White Dragon Emperor made it clear he was no longer in league with the Governor General and thus no longer taking his orders. Azazel did not look pleased by that fact and seemed disappointed by Valley's choice, but accepted it. He then offered to create a barrier for them to fight away from the town so they wouldn't wreak any havoc. Issei honestly wished Azazel had done more to convince them not to fight in the first place, but he should have considered it lucky they were able to convince the battle maniac to move the fight at all. And he was also thankful the fallen angel had gifted him this armlet that acted as the price for boosted gear's scale mail instead of another body part. Issei looked over to the side to see a small barrier just protruding from the dome where Asia was being protected. The blonde nun continued to cry out his name and cheer for his victory. He honestly didn't know whether Asia was being optimistic or just completely ignorant of his losing, but hearing her have such hope for him did fill him with power.
Wait, Azazel was there earlier, right? Where'd Issei? Holy shit. Bucko-san. Naruto-san. Asia turned to her seniors with tears in her eyes and pointed out into the battle. Issei-san is trying to hold Valley-san off, but I don't think he can do it for much longer. Come here, Asia. Rias quickly stepped up and hugged the girl before she completely lost control and broke down. The nun nervously looked out into the battlefield again as Rias did the same. There has to be something we can do.
Not much, unfortunately. Azazel piped up, earning looks from all the devils as he just looked up at the floating figure of Valley in the sky. At your current levels, I doubt you'd even be able to withstanding being in the same field as their battle without a barrier to protect you. That's just the kind of fight that this is.
Rias narrowed her eyes. There has to be something we can do. You didn't just bring us here to spectate, did you?
I brought you here because your servant could use your support. As much as he can get, honestly, because the cards have been stacked against him since this new cycle began. Azazel shook his head pityingly and looked back up at his former charge. That boy, he must have been born when all the stars and planets aligned and Lady Luck decided she was gonna roll a winner.
Rias and Naruto looked between each other before the blonde, Pawn, asked, and what the hell does that mean exactly? Valley isn't just the wielder of the Longinus, divine dividing. He's one of the last living descendants of the original Mao.
Are you serious? Naruto was confused, but when he looked back he saw the terrified expressions on Rias and Asia's faces. He remembered the name as being a part of Searzek's position as a leader of devils, but he still didn't know why the name invoked that response. What's wrong?
The original Mao. Rias paused and gulped before looking down. The original Maos were the devils who led and commanded our armies against angels and fallen angels years ago in the war.
Their power was absolute, and few devils dared question them and lived to tell about it. The original 4 Maos died at the end of the war, but their names were still so influential that powerful devils stepped up to take their mantles and lead the devils today. That's what Oni-sama and Serafal-sama did by taking the names of Lucifer and Leviathan. But the descendants of those original Mao still have sway over the people today, and they are said to be just as strong as the current Mao. Valley Lucifer. That is my full name. The man himself spoke up and immediately grabbed their attention as 8 devil wings sprouted from his back to join the bright blue wings of his armor. I must admit, having one of the original Mao as an ancestor certainly has its perks.
He's a Lucifer, a heavenly dragon, and wields a weapon strong enough to kill gods. Azazel chuckled. He might just be the strongest Hikuryuko in the past, present, and future. And that's why I thought your friend could use the support.
Naruto narrowed his eyes and looked between the proud figure of Valley in the air and Issei knelt on the ground. He then turned to look at Rias and Asia to see the panic and worry in their eyes. He ground his teeth together before quickly stepping back and dropping to the ground with his legs crossed. Azazel sent a look down at him before a small smirk grew on his face. Issei blanked in horror and looked back up at his foe. He knew just by the way he carried himself and how he wore his armor that he was much stronger than Issei, but until now he did not realize just how outclassed he was. The potential his eternal rival had to grow and become more powerful seemed almost unlimited now. Already had the potential of a Mao, and added with the power of a dragon like Diedreg.
Partner, now is not the time to be lamenting. Give him a moment and he'll use it against you. Nice observation, Diedreg, but you heard what he said, right? The strongest vanishing dragon in existence. We're rivals for a reason. My power can match his equally. It just depends on our current host. That boy might have a prestigious bloodline, but that doesn't mean you can't catch up. But what about right now when it matters, Issei? Don't lie to me, Diedreg. Where do I stand right now against him?
Unfortunately, you only recently discovered you had my power, and you haven't been training with it or utilizing it as best you could. You can't activate my full power unless you sacrifice a portion of your being in return, and even then it's only for so long. There's still room to grow, but currently, you are the least able of all the hosts I've occupied over the years. That left a dull pang in Issei's heart that made his expression fall behind his helmet.
It wasn't really a surprise and he knew it himself all along, but to be told that now when faced with his foe who he could never hope to reach only clouded his mind with fear.
He didn't like to fight, but if he knew he was going to be faced with such an overwhelming wall, then he would have done more to control this power. Give himself a fighting chance to live. But now he was simply being toyed with while Valley decided whether to wait for him to grow stronger or just end his life now and hope for a better rival the next time around.
Well, he wasn't gonna give the bastard a choice. WRAAHHHHHHH.
Boost. Raw power rushed off Issei's body in the form of green energy. With another piercing roar, the armor-clad pervert leapt off the ground, cratering the earth beneath him as he soared through the sky and straight towards Valley. The white-clad figure shifted in the air before flying backwards, avoiding Issei's desperate attack with his arms still casually crossed. He continued to effortlessly dodge the barrage of punches. Hit your second wind. Go to hell, you fucking shithead. Issei screamed and charged after Valley as quickly as possible as the jets on his back flared. A green streak of light flowed behind the red blur that chased the white one through the air. Issei roared, "If you're just gonna float there boasting with your arms crossed, then stay still and let me hit you. Because if you think bragging about your family tree would be enough for me to curl up in a ball, then think again." D-Drag.
Boost. Explosion. Divide, 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 divide. The sudden swell of energy Issei felt immediately vanished. He looked down at himself and noticed the glow in his jewels had diminished. What the OOUF?
Valley's fist came swinging in and struck Issei in the side of his helmet. The red armor went sailing out of the sky and cratered into the ground once more with a earth-shaking crack. Smoke and dust kicked up from the impact and Issei slowly tried to pick himself up. A large crack went down the side of his helmet and left a portion of his face free from the mask. He slowly raised his hand and touched the broken part. "Hey, are you serious? This isn't about me bragging about my lineage. It was a warning to you just how outrageous your current situation is."
Valley's voice came out even and unperturbed while Issei gasped for air and crouched on the ground. "My power is far greater than yours is. And I have far more experience with my sacred gear than you can even fathom. Even in Balance Breaker you are somehow still limited to a boost in energy every 10 seconds, while I can divide your power and add it to my own while like this." Valley looked back at his wings as they glowed brighter and blue particles started to emanate off them. "See, I have so much power right now I have to just burn some excess off." Damn it. Issei muttered as his hand clenched into fists. Damn it all. I suppose it was too hopeful of me to believe I could get some kind of fight out of you this soon into our lives. I'll just have to wait and hope you make some kind of stride in harnessing your true power. Valley spoke, hanging his head and shaking it in disappointment. He raised his hand as a ball of energy formed in his palm, "But I still need to make sure you're motivated to get stronger. Maybe not so far as to kill your loved ones just yet, but perhaps a mark. A scar to remind you of our confrontation and what you need to become. Perhaps that will." Shuriken. Valley flew up and over the flying attack in time to see it pass under his feet. He quickly turned around and watched the strange jutsu cross over the field in a matter of seconds before erupting in a powerful explosion of wind. As the dome of swirling energy continued to run rampant behind him, Valley turned around and looked at his sudden new attacker. "Oh. You're just so damn talkative," Naruto said. His eyes lined with orange and a horizontal pupil signaled his swell of power as the whiskered man smirked. "It just seemed like someone had to shut your mouth." Naruto. Rias slammed her fist against the dome surrounding them after Naruto had suddenly slipped out of it and into the battle. She quickly turned on Azazel and glared furiously at him. "What were you thinking letting him out like that? I thought it'd be easier just complying and letting him through than either listening to him complain or him trying to break out by force." "Then you were wrong." Rias turned back and yelled at her impulsive boyfriend. "Damn it, Naruto, get back in here where it's safe. You don't know the scale of which this battle can go." "Maybe not." Naruto turned back around and knelt down by Issei's side, "but it really looked like you could use some help. Kinda stupid on your part to just come out here into the middle of a fight." Issei groaned despite a faint pull on his lips appearing through the crack of his helmet. "But thanks for giving me some time." "No problem. You need some more? I wouldn't turn down the opportunity." "Say no more." Naruto stood up from Issei's side and looked up at Valley directly.
He cracked his knuckles and smirked viciously at the armor-clad teen. Now I'm gonna try choke slamming you one more time. Please just allow it to happen or else I might have to get a little more violent with you. Sorry to see there's still nothing to be done about that boundless stupidity you suffer from. Valley slowly lowered himself back down to the earth and chuckled behind his helmet. I truly wish there was something we could do to help, but the only possible answer I could imagine is getting you a new head. Maybe the healer will be able to fix the old one properly after I'm done squishing it under my foot.
Won't know until you try. And you are welcome to try. But if you do, I'm taking that as consent for me to kick you around as well.
Alright, as amusing as it is to have this back and forth with you, I don't appreciate the interruption of my fight. Valley's voice lost all signs of amusement as his wings grew further out behind him. This is a battle, Issei Hyodo, and I have been destined to fight since before we were born. We don't need you barging in and getting involved.
Yeah, I heard all about your dragons and your fates intertwined to be destined to fight from ages before and ages ahead. It sounds all legendary and traditional and great. Thing is, I already have some experience with apparently being destined before birth to fight someone to the death.
Valley scoffed. You have no idea. And I just decided why the fuck I should just stand by and watch that kind of shit happen again. If I can interfere, fuck up your plans and shit on this apparent fate, then I'm totally up for it. Naruto rolled his shoulders, plus I've got a soft spot for the useless rookie underdog who can't raise a finger against the prestigious asshole blessed by the gods.
Naruto-senpai, I appreciate the help and the encouragement, but I think the useless part you added on wasn't necessary. Just speaking the truth. Are you helping me or trying to kick me while I'm down?
Both. Naruto leaned forward and dashed ahead, disappearing from his spot and clearing the space between him and Valley in an instant. He reeled his fist back and prepared to attack, but only hit thin air when Valley flew backwards and out of his way. Naruto clicked his teeth and leapt forward the moment his foot hit the ground.
The blonde blur leapt after the white one with unrelenting fury and focus. Naruto's speed and stamina were enhanced dramatically in Sage mode, but Valley was easily able to keep up with his movement and avoid while in Balance Breaker.
The chase continued for several more seconds, treads of earth being uprooted by their intense movement but still no closer to confronting each other. Naruto growled before raising his fist up and bringing it down on the ground, cratering the earth and raising several slabs of rock. He palmed two pieces and dug his fingers in them before with a mighty roar he spun and threw them at the vanishing dragon. Valley simply stood his ground and allowed the two chunks of rock to break against his body. They shattered instantly and didn't leave even a scuff mark on the pristine white armor as Valley spotted Naruto charging at him through the debris. He simply unfolded his arms and reached out to grab Naruto's fist before it could land. A rush of air brushed past them both when the impact struck, but Valley quickly clamped down on the fist and locked him in place. So was this attack supposed to be part?
Ha! Valley raised his other hand and caught the kick from the identical blonde from the side. He locked the clone in place as well and looked back at it as well. Of that violent alternative you were talking about? That's right. Valley looked up again in time to see a third Naruto drop from overhead with his leg raised over his head. With a loud roar, he brought the leg down on Valley's shoulder and cratered the ground beneath him from the force.
Set. 10x. Loop. A small series of cracks appeared around the impact space but continued to grow as the impact repeated. The entire pauldron finally shattered into pieces and all three blondes jumped back when Valley remained still. That armor was extremely durable and it required several repeated hits to break through. But Naruto smirked as Valley raised his arm and cradled his shoulder with more rigidity than he moved with before.
There was a slight hitch in his tone before the armor turned to look at him. Clever trick. One Naruto smiled. Glad to see you liked it. Ah, that felt weird. Give a fox some warning before you do that again. Don't even know what made me yell that out. That armor looked super tough and probably wasn't gonna go down with just one hit. Another Naruto piped up. But it isn't just physical attacks that can work. The third Naruto said with a smirk as he clenched his fist for emphasis. Thanks to a little frog Kata, I can still hit you even while you're hidden under all that armor. Were you expecting that? Yes, actually I was. Valley casually responded as he stood back up and rotated his shoulder gingerly, swiping his hand aside as bright blue energy wafted off his hand and the pauldron was fixed. The Narutos blinked in surprise at his quick response and looked between each other as the Hakuryuko opened and closed his hand to regain some feeling. I have two sages I am closely acquainted with and I wish to see how your abilities compared to theirs.
Your strength, speed, and reaction times have increased exponentially, and your ability to project your attack without direct contact is impressive, but nothing that can't be avoided. I'm sure Baiko or Kuroka could use their abilities to gain the same results. Although the clone trick is certainly amusing.
Naruto's eyes narrowed in annoyance. So I guess that thing about you being so full of yourself isn't just restricted to you and your rival, huh? You pick up being an unbearable asshole from Azazel, or is that just your natural state? All natural. Azazel piped up from behind the dome, tried to teach him some manners and how to be a little more charming, but never worked. Only girl I know that ever got along with him was Lavinia. Shut up, Azazel. Valley's tone suddenly became curt and unamused. Seriously, I'll never understand why that cute little lady is so affectionate with you. You act all rude and unapproachable and she still hugs you to her breast and pats your head. Azazel, you think the least you can do is call her Oni-chan, or something in return. The tension of the battlefield had slowly lulled with Azazel's interjection. The devils blinked and slowly looked over at Valley in preparation for his response as the proud set of armor simply shook with barely contained rage. No one dared speak a word.
PFF'd. Valley instantly spread out his wings and charged forward to attack Naruto and his clones. One of the blondes jumped back in line with Valley's charge while the other two jumped to either side of him. The vanishing dragon's charge missed its chance to destroy his foes, but the magic circles that appeared around his body fired lightning in every direction and erased the clones from existence in a puff of smoke. Naruto's eyes widened and he jumped back again to escape from Valley's reach. The Lucifer was quickly on his tail and Naruto was running out of space to run. With a yell he expanded his wings and flew up in the air to gain some space. But Valley was quick to catch him and started to exchange blows with the Whisker Devil. With the power of Sage Mode, Naruto's strength, reactions, and durability were all heightened enough that he could sense and block Valley's oncoming attacks. But even his enhanced speed and strength could only do so much against the staggering force of Valley's blows. The armor he skulked around in wasn't for intimidation and it wasn't just for show either. These blows were heavy, carrying weight and force he hadn't been expecting from someone that had looked so small. He watched Issei smack around that fallen angel in 12 seconds with armor just like this. He should have expected things to not be so easy. Even so, he persisted and fought back against Valley's assault as best as possible. Naruto saw his opportunity arise when Valley brought his fist back a little too far for a haymaker. Naruto saw it coming a mile away, and could feel its path with his enhanced senses. He lowered his head out of the way of Valley's fist and let it sail over him while he slammed his fist into the white breastplate. He smirked at the resounding thud and quiet groan he received from inside the helmet, set. Naruto felt a wave of agony shoot through his whole body like his skin was prickled by 1,000 needles. He grit his teeth together to quell his yell as his body convulsed with the electric shock coursing through it. The pain finally ceased and his body started to fall out of the air. The blonde only just regained his control when he heard Rias and the others cry out for him and his wings spread out to stop his fall. Naruto panted for breath. What? I was there with Azazel while he was implanting your artificial sacred gear. I know what it can do, and I know about its weaknesses. Once you have set something you cannot unset it and you are unable to make the next set until you have looped the first one. The magic circles floating around him that had shocked Naruto the moment he attacked dissipated from existence, which means if you saw the chance to attack but were hurt in the process, you would also be affected by your ability and forced to suffer the consequences. Quote. You bastard, Naruto seethed, you lured me into attack. Just wanted to see how a warrior from another world stacked up in a fight. Your tenacity is surely impressive, but I think you were a little too gung-ho to charge into battle. Things aren't the same on this world as they are on yours. And I'm not impressed by what I'm seeing. Kurama, Naruto, you're gonna, now? Naruto soared straight at his foe. Shit. Loop. The place Naruto punched rang out again like a gong and Valley felt the pressure of his punch impact the inside of his chest. A web of cracks appeared on Valley's breastplate as Naruto stilled from the sensation of electricity running up his spine. He continued flying up even through the pain and yelled as he charged the armored figure. His fist struck the side of the helmet and Valley's head shot back. The armored man quickly snapped forward and grabbed Naruto by the wings, yanking him back and flying straight downwards into the ground.
Naruto-san. Naruto! Rias cried out and stared at the dust cloud that erupted from their harsh drop. Her fists clenched so tightly her arms started to shake before she turned to the mix-haired man that had been watching silently. Let me go out there as well.
Azazel raised an eyebrow before shaking his head. That probably isn't the best idea. Your destruction is pretty damn impressive, but besides that you don't have much combative experience. If you got in there and you were killed, I'm sure the devils would go up in riot and Searsex would lose his mind.
You use logic to keep me in here, but you let those two go out and fight without a second thought? Did you lose your mind along with that arm?
Ah, that's mean. Azazel feigned sadness while Rias' glare grew sharper and less amused. The older man sighed and shook his head. I didn't let those two go out there and fight for shits and giggles if that's your impression. I let them fight because they need to understand what's ahead.
What is ahead? Azazel-san, Asia nervously asked. Valley's just a small part of Chaos Brigade, and there are bound to be tons of people with the same goal as Kataraya Leviathan. And maybe even the same kind of skill level as them as well. They aren't a threat to be trifled with or underestimated. And right now those boys are two of the best cards we have to play against them in the future. Issei needs to understand where he stands against his closest foe, and how much more he needs to do before he's ready to face him.
A balance breaker he can achieve on his own, and synchronicity with the Welsh Dragon are the minimum requirements going ahead. And Naruto has to understand that while he might have some of his power back now, it isn't going to be enough for the foes he'll face in the future. He isn't from this world and doesn't know the vast powers within it. If he's going to jump into battles without prior planning, now that he's gotten a little strength back, he needs to see what the consequences will be.
But why do I have to simply watch them get hurt? They're my servants, I need to help them, Rias countered.
Help them by watching. Azazel calmly answered. You have the security in your peerage and a boy that traveled from beyond this world's boundaries. It's not crazy to think that you and your servants will be involved in many of the battles to come, if not directly centered in them. So watch. Azazel jerked his head back to the battle as Rias did the same. Watch what you will have to face, what you will need to be prepared for, and what your friends are capable of doing. Rias' eyes widened as the dust cloud finally started to drop and revealed the figures inside of it. The massive white armored man was struggling to push something down as another figure fought back. The redhead took in a sharp breath when she saw Naruto crouched on the ground gripping one of Valley's arms while the Hakuryuko grabbed one of his. Naruto frowned but pushed back. If my wings are even more crooked now because of you, I'm gonna be a little mad.
That's your most pressing concern? Valley chuckled. I thought me crushing you into the dirt would be more important.
Meh, not really worried about that at the moment. Feeling more focused on after we're done. You should be too. Like for example, Naruto's hand snapped open as a ball of energy started to form over his palm. What are you gonna do about that nasty wound you're about to get on your chest? I'm not worried. Divide. Naruto's knees buckled as the strength was suddenly sapped from his body. The Rasengan that had been forming in his hand destabilized from the sudden change and dissipated. The whiskered devil gawked in shock but quickly tried to push back against Valley's increasing pressure. What the hell? Divide. Naruto felt even weaker as his defense steadily suffered. Valley harshly grabbed Naruto's arm, yanking his out of the blonde's weakening grip before lifting him off his feet. Naruto looked up in time to see the fist come swinging in and strike him across the face. With his strength divided and his defenses drained, he felt a good chunk of the power behind the punch even with his Sage mode. Naruto. Kurama's voice came through his ears like a dull ring with the full force of Valley's punch. In his fog he suddenly felt weightless and realized too late that he had been thrown across the battlefield. He bounced off the ground and uprooted the earth when he did before he came to a slow stop. He pushed himself off the ground, coughing and letting blood spill out from between his lips. The hard, metallic taste filled his mouth before he turned and glared at Valley's strong form.
Hey, Naruto. Can you still hear me? Not so loud, Kurama, I've got a splitting headache. Which is a miracle considering your head should be split open from all those hits. Don't exaggerate. I'm barely exaggerating. This guy has sapped a ton of your power. You're barely holding on even in Sage mode. Yeah, taking my power and not even turning into a frog. Naruto groused as he forced himself up on his feet. Guess he's got that over on Nagato. This might be a bit harder than I anticipated. Are you gonna be okay? We faced worse stuff than this asshole? Yeah, but to be fair, I did carry a lot of the heavy weight in some of your more intense fights. Oh, that's rich. I can remember a ton of intense shit I've done where you were just in there laying on your belly and scratching yourself. Yeah, but even then I was still saving your ass time after time. So I'm useless without you? You said it, not me. You saying I should give up? No, and don't bother telling me you won't because I know you saying, just a little caution might save your life.
Yeah, well, tell him that. Valley's wings spread out behind him and he sped forward. Naruto scowled and crossed his fingers as two of his clones popped up by his side. Two of them offered their hands to him before he started spinning on the spot and twirling them around. With a roar he released his hold as the two whiskered blondes went sailing through the air and straight towards Valley. The armored man raised his fist and threw it at the midair devils. One Naruto placed his feet against the other's back and kicked off at the last moment. One was sent into the ground while the other flew over Valley's fist and head to land behind him. The vanishing dragon quickly turned on the spot and swung his arms out, blocking the high kick and low punch from both sides. He threw his arms out and knocked them back before swinging his fist down in a hammer towards one Naruto's head. The blonde raised his arms up and blocked it in a cross between his arms as Valley's foot lashed backwards and knocked the Naruto crouching behind him. He quickly pressured the blonde he faced into an exchange of blows as Naruto tried to keep out of Valley's reach and avoid his blows. His fist lashed out and met the armored gauntlet in return as a shockwave exploded from their impact. Magic circles appeared behind his back and blocked the punch from the second clone behind him. They changed color and started to fire out bolts of lightning that the whiskered sages deftly dodged with the help of their enhanced forms. The two devils landed in crouches on the ground as the bolts of plasma tore through the ground around them. They charged him from both sides as the lightning continued to jump and arc around him. Valley blocked one punch while the magic circle behind him warded off the clone attacking his flank. He brought his foot down and shattered the ground beneath him and forced Naruto to jump before he lost his footing. Valley's hand shot out and grabbed his ankle before whipping the clone around and slamming him into the other Naruto. Both popped into smoke after their impact and Valley swiped it away with a mighty swing of his arm. Just in time to see the original Naruto still in place with his hand raised high and another ball with spinning blades in his palm. Naruto tried to catch his breath, feeling more winded from creating clones and using his jutsu now that Valley had reduced his power. Even so, with a little time and some distraction from his clones, he gathered enough power for an exceptionally big one.
Take this. Naruto turned and threw the massive attack as hard as he could, the giant ball and spinning blade leaving his hand and tearing through the ground. Big ball Rasenshuriken, and go to hell. Albion, Valley quietly said as he raised his hand.
Divide dimension. The blue jewels of Valley's scale mail announced with a ring as the spinning ball of chakra suddenly halved in size. Everyone's eyes widened in shock seeing the powerful attack suddenly shrink in size, but Valley held his hand out further.
Divide dimension. 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 The Rasen Shuriken continued to shrink in size with every command. The jutsu continued to shrink over and over until it was merely a fraction of its original size. The technique clashed against Valley's palm and let out a loud bang but barely anything compared to the desired effect. Valley pulled his hand in and looked at the scratches that marred his palm. They were bathed in and disappeared altogether with a blue glow as Valley's gauntlet returned to its pristine condition. He clicked his fingers and chuckled before looking up at his weakened foe. So should I assume that was your ace in the hole? If you want, but I'm just getting started. Naruto boldly lied as the color surrounding his eyes slowly vanished as his sage mode disappeared. He had no doubt he could stand back up and continue fighting, and while he didn't have the extra strength he could make more clones to attack like a stampede. But Naruto felt the need to be wary of his foe with every new skill he showed. Dividing an individual's power. Dividing physical form repeatedly. A mastery and usage of those magic circles that outdid even Rias and Akino in ability.
This was a challenge unlike any Naruto had faced since he arrived in this world, and a foe different and similar to many he faced back in his world.
Overwhelming. Naruto. I know. Naruto whispered as Valley raised his hand again, get ready for another.
Now. Explosion. Sword. Valley jumped to the side as a red blur dashed by his side in a burst of speed. There was a long crack along his ribs that quickly started to spurt blood as he clutched the wound tightly. Valley groused and looked back up at the red armor standing by Naruto's side. I see you've regained more than enough of your strength to fight again. And with the Ascalon blade as well makes you more troublesome. I had more than enough time while you and Senpai had it. Issei proclaimed with a chuckle before pointing the end of Ascalon at his fellow heavenly dragon. You know, for a guy that goes on and on about us being rivals and being destined to fight, you sure forgot about me real quick. I suppose I did. Valley lowered his hand while the blood ceased to seep from his injury any longer. Apologies, but I do get engrossed in my fights when I am up against an opponent who gets my attention. Naruto Uzumaki was an interesting adversary, even if he didn't leave much in the way of damage in return to what I offered.
Oh, you are making me want to slap that smug pale mug harder and harder with every word. Naruto sneered as he took a deep breath and sent a look at the red armor beside him. Glad to see you're back on your feet again, and with a shit ton of power to boot. You held him off for plenty of time, Senpai, Issei praised. I could get all my power back and even increase it with what you gave me. And you did more damage to him than I could breaking through that armor. So not fair. Boosting power and dividing it at will. You fuckers drew the lottery. Naruto griped before smirking at Valley. He dropped to the ground with crossed legs and closed his eyes. I need to catch my breath and some of the power that asshole siphoned, so mind picking up the slack? Oh, Issei brandished the sword sticking from his gauntlet and grinned behind his helmet and visor. It'd be my absolute fucking pleasure. Naruto started gathering his power as Issei charged forward at Valley. The vanishing dragon expanded his wings in preparation as the Welsh dragon was quickly upon him.
Issei roared at the top of his lungs as he swung the sword down over Valley's head, the dragon-slaying weapon shining as it drew closer to its target. Valley leapt backwards and watched as the blade tore through the ground instead of his body. Just staring at the saber and the aura emanating from it was enough for his instincts to sound like klaxons in warning. He smirked behind his helmet. Well, now you might just be showing the barest minimum of potential.
Got more where that came from. Issei pulled Ascalon back, DDRAIG.
Transfer. The blade along his red gauntlet shined brighter than a star for an instant as the aura encompassing the sacred sword swelled. With another mighty roar, Issei whipped the blade forward as a wave of aura flew from the blade at blinding speeds. Valley drifted to the side to avoid the attack, but a portion of his wing was destroyed by the attack anyway. Valley slid to a stop and looked at the damage done with a chuckle.
A ball of lightning grew over Valley's palm before he threw out his hand and a massive bolt burned a trench through the battlefield.
The blast was quickly upon Issei faster than he could dodge and had to raise his sword and arms to block. The blast parted around him as he screamed and pushed against the overwhelming attack. With another cry, he threw his arms out and dispelled the attack around him. He felt a faint shock go up his body but resisted the pain as he made sure to keep his eyes on his quick opponent. I'm impressed. Valley called out as he met a charging Issei head-on. Their collision kicked up the earth around them as they started trading blows. Issei's reach was longer with Ascalon, but Valley easily avoided and landed several devastating punches along his body. It appears with just enough enhanced energy and a sword by your side you start to pose as a credible foe.
And even with a cut in your ribs and part of your wings destroyed, you're still a raging dickhead. Now that's impressive. Amusing. Valley's chide remark came with a chuckle before his hand reached up and grabbed Ascalon above his head before Issei could make the swing. The perverted brunette looked up in shock at the brash, reckless move as the blade cut through the armor as Valley's blood seeped down its form. The Hakuryuko seemed completely nonplussed by his new injury as he reeled back and struck Issei across the face. His red helmet shattered upon contact and flew back as Ascalon tore through Valley's palm and left a line of blood fly through the air. The silver-haired boy examined the blood from his hand and chuckled, now I truly am conflicted. Should I wait and see what your future has to offer, or is this enough excitement to warrant killing you now? Decisions, Desi. Valley's arm whipped out and shattered the giant slab of rock heading for his head.
The rock was reduced to dust and the pieces of stone harmlessly clattered against his form as the Lucifer focused on his assailant. The whiskered devil slowly strode up to Issei's side with the orange markings back around his eyes. He rotated his shoulder and snarled, "Still gonna need some time to get back all that power you stole from me, you bastard. Not nearly enough time than you have left." Issei and Naruto stood across from their foe, but the Security leaned in towards his fellow pawn, and whispered, Senpai, do we have a plan against this guy? Because I don't think the band Azazel-san gave me will last much longer. And when that breaks, my balance breaker disappears as well, and then it'll just be me and you against him." Naruto hated hearing about the reminder but knew how true it rang. So far all they had been able to do is switch out when the other needed time to regain their strength and fight until it was their turn. But Issei's power had a limit before breaking and Naruto knew he hadn't regained his strength yet. He had at most one more Rasenshuriken to use against their powerful armored foe before his Sage mode disappeared and they were at Valley's mercy. He had been going easy on them too. His power was extraordinary but Naruto knew that he still had more to show. Faster movements, more techniques, and far more lethal means of ending them. If they didn't act now.
Hey Valley. All attention went to the side as Azazel stood behind his protective dome and waved to his former charge. "I think it's about time this ended, don't you think? You don't dictate my actions anymore, Azazel." Valley coldly responded through his headgear. "I'm not going to stop this fight until I lose enjoyment."
"Oh, I know, but I'm proposing an alternative. How about instead of drawing this out until it's no longer fun, we end it in one glorious move?" Rias, Asia, and the boys looked at Azazel in a mix of confusion and disbelief as the fallen angel shrugged his shoulder, and on a high note considering these two will be running on fumes before long.
"What the hell are you doing?" Rias whispered. "Me?" Azazel smirked. "I'm hoping those two dunderheads realize the advantage they have against Valley before they get killed."
"It's some kind of trick. Obviously." Valley responded to Albion's astute observation, "But I suppose Azazel does raise a fair point. I would rather this battle end on an interesting last step before they lose their power and I resort to the equivalent of kicking puppies."
"Yes, I suppose while beating the red one into a mushy paste would be amusing now, in the long run it would be quite unfulfilling. And I do so wish to see what else this new incarnation has to offer."
"Oh, I certainly hope that hubris isn't what brings us toppling down." Valley chuckled skeptically before crossing his arms. "Very well, Azazel, I'll let these two use whatever desperate means you believe they possess in order to assure their survival." He waved his hand out to his two opponents challengingly. "Go ahead, Issei Hyodo, Naruto Uzumaki, surprise me."
"Great. Naruto blinked. "Yeah? Do that big blue spinning thing again. The one that spins with those little blades." Azazel waved his finger. "Make it a good one." Okay." Naruto lowered his stance and held out a hand before his other one started to rapidly move over it, molding the shape and nature of the jutsu to its most destructive form.
"One part done." Azazel leaned in towards Rias with a cheeky grin. "This next part is the clench." The redhead looked perplexed before the fallen angel turned back to the battlefield. "Hey Issei." The young brunette turned to look over at them. "Valley is going to do whatever he can in order to earn a rise out of you."
Issei perked up. "Why yeah, I know. He's going to kill the nun. Slaughter your family. If you don't do something soon, you'll lose everything you love." "I know that. But most devastating of all is the fact that Valley can reduce the size of anything in his sight. So he'll probably shrink all the breasts in the world to awe cups just to spite you." It was completely silent across the domed battlefield except for the intense sound of the jutsu being formed beside him. But even that shrill noise could not be compared to the snapping sound as the ground beneath Issei's feet cracked from the sudden boost in pressure. "Breasts? This bastard is going to reduce the size of their breasts? Issei-san. The most beautiful things in the world. The most wonderful creations by the universe and gods and all beings in existence. And he would dare consider minimizing their volume and grace. Issei, now may not be the time? Kaneko-chan's budding blossoms?"
Asia's steadily growing tatas. Zenovia's wonderfully voluptuous bazooms. Akeno-san's beautiful, bountiful, bodacious sweater puppies bouncing brashly within their barely contained confines. And Buku's perfect boobs, as if crafted and sculpted by the hands of the greatest Renaissance masters themselves, patches of land that lead numerous men and women to paradise and nirvana. You dare to even dream of shrinking those glorious dreams, you piece of shit.
You know that's my girlfriend's chest you're talking about, right? Naruto bitterly growled while the pressure blasting off of the red armor beside him nearly made him topple over. I'd slap you if I wasn't sure my hand would break against the wind pressure right now.
Love is sacred and shared between those whose feelings are true, but the wonderful Gonzangas are a treat that cannot be contained to just one person. I shall not dare apologize. Take whatever retributions you deem necessary, for the gifts of the universe are ones I shall never stop enjoying.
Boost. 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 Boost.
Am I seriously experiencing this much of a power-up simply because of my partner's irrational love of breasts? Geez. Boost. 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 WRAAAHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHobliterating the ground and space around them simply by the power of his voice. His power surged to jaw-dropping scale before he held out his hand. Senpai.
Ready. Naruto held out his Rasen Shuriken, transfer.
The power enveloping Issei suddenly vanished and poured into the jutsu in Naruto's hands. All eyes widened in awe as they saw the center of the jutsu gain a bright green center that steadily grew out and enveloped the entire ball in a solid green orb. The blades swirling around the center started to spin even faster until it looked like a single consistent ring around the center. Divide. Valley abruptly held out his hand and aimed his technique in reducing the unknown power. Even so, the technique did not falter or lose any speed or power, either resistant to the dividing or so overwhelmingly powerful that a single half didn't matter. Oh, now that's interesting.
So, you wanna repeat this thing when it goes off? I can pretty much tell this is gonna get nasty. Naruto chuckled, I think one will be enough. Wise choice. Issei looked to his companion, ready senpai? Naruto grinned and squared his shoulders, you know it, fuckface.
Yes. Valley opened his arms wide and laughed maniacally as a myriad of magic circles were summoned behind him. The wall of different colors and sizes continued to stack atop each other until they seemed to reach the top of the dome above as the White Dragon Emperor laughed behind his mask, show me what you have to offer.
Hold your hands out and push. Azazel quickly warned as Rias complied and Asia hid behind them, this is gonna get violent. Welsh Dragon, Rasen's Hurricane, Devil. Oh no. The power. Gasper panicked as the TV and lights started to flicker. The ground started to quake and the Dampier quickly retreated into his box. Earthquake. Kaneko felt something different about how the earth shook and looked out the window when she spotted something amidst in sight, stupid. Devil, Xenovia turned to her sparring partner, do you think they're okay? Well, Issei-kun is extremely powerful, and we've seen personally how resilient Naruto-san can be. Yuto wiped the sweat from his brow with a complicated expression, but even this worries me.
Devil. I am not going to let Rias off easy with this one. Sona sternly started as she paced around the room with her peerage desperately falling in line and preparing to work. Does she have any idea how much work it's going to take to alter everyone's memories of that? We need to act fast. Before someone starts taping it on their phone and sending it out on the social networks.
But Kaichu, it's huge. Then we need to act fast, move out. Devil, Akeno stood at the entrance of her shrine, staring out silently at the hurrying yet mesmerizing sight in front of her. Here she was on the other side of town, deep in the mountains, but the image before her was clear as day. A giant beacon of green light shined up from the other edge of Kuo so brightly it was like another sun. It shot up high over the town and straight into the sky, blasting away any remnant of clouds that may have filled the sky and leaving it in a green tint for miles. Giant bolts of electricity traveled up the pillar and discharged into the atmosphere as the ground continued to shake from the very presence of the beam. The long-haired woman sighed and shook her head, if you all don't make it back, I'm going to be very cross. Devil.
Violent gusts of wind and dust and ash swirled around Ground Zero and made breathing nearly impossible. There was a hum in the air, the remains of the loud explosion that had finished scorching this place only moments ago. Violent bolts of electricity still discharged in the air and each step crunched under the weight of the footfalls.
Valley wiped the blood that seeped from his head out of his eyes and rubbed it between his fingers. He looked down at his right arm and saw the damaged limb hang uselessly at his side with blood and discolored bruises over what was visible.
That attack was incredible and even Valley's efforts could only do so much to block it. He released a multitude of magical blasts to counter the oncoming technique, but even released all at once they barely did anything to counter the supposed jutsu. Fortunately, one bolt to the center of the attack was enough to ignite it prematurely, but that only brought more problems.
The explosion was mighty and rocked the very ground they stood upon. The dragon energy released by that attack was mighty, but it was the unknown factors swirling about inside of it that caught Valley off guard.
Inside the overwhelming energy were little blades of energy so small they may as well have been microscopic. They tore through his arm at such a small level that while there were no lacerations he had no feeling in his limb because of it. He couldn't properly channel his power through the limb either and so it was useless at the moment. He was going to need some serious healing once this was done. If this had hit him directly then Valley was sure the damage would have been permanent. If not solely from the explosion then from the microscopic pieces that threatened to cripple his power completely. If the attack had started traveling further than just his arm then he may have been threatened enough to activate Juggernaut Drive.
Issei Hyodo had a great deal to learn, and Naruto Uzumaki was lacking the sheer destructive force. The power and experience they made up for in each other. Valley couldn't help the pleased smile that came upon his face when he saw his injured and exhausted foes pull themselves out of the ash. The armor had vanished and the eyeliner had disappeared which left the two men to their most basic devices, but their potential. Before he could take a step forward and engage them any further a line was drawn in the ruined ground before him by a wave of destruction. The White Dragon Emperor looked to the side and saw Rias Grimori standing in the ruins of the battlefield with a disheveled appearance and grime on her once flawless skin. Even so she stood defiantly against his threat and kept her power emanating from her hand. That's enough. Take one more step towards my pawns, and you'll never get a chance to fight ever again. That's bold, Rias Grimori. Interfere in my fights and you'll get hurt. Touch my servants and you'll be dead. Do you think I'm so badly hurt I can't defend myself? Do you think I care? Well, there you have it, Valley. I think you've met a worthy opponent to match you in sheer stubbornness. Azazel made his way through the field while offering his arm to Asia, the nun coughing and rubbing her eyes clean of the mess while escorted by the Governor General. The mix-haired man smirked, but I told you things were gonna be left off on a high note. And one hell of a boom if I do say so myself. Yes, quite. Valley looked around. Did you know this would be the result, Azazel? Oh fuck no, I just thought it'd be cool as shit if they combined their attacks and things got crazy. And it was, satisfied? Very, and I think enough for me to call it a day. Valley forced with whatever control he had left of his injured arm to slip his hands into his pockets and sprout his wings. I am very interested in not only what Issei Hyodo has to offer in the near future, but what Naruto Uzumaki will be able to provide in the way of a challenge. I'll be uniquely interested in seeing how they progress with the numerous foes to come. Because heed my warning, there will be great obstacles in your way. Cool. Keep that to the heart. Naruto said through his panting, so can you just fuck off now, please? Valley chuckled as he slowly lifted off the ground and flew into the air. He started flying before his last warning hung in the air and reached their eyes. See you soon. The devils and fallen angel watched as the Lucifer and his Longinus disappeared from sight altogether. If I don't have to see that bastard again for even a day, Issei groaned, it'll be a fucking miracle. Amen. Big boys flinched from the sting in their heads. Issei-san. Naruto-san. Asia came running over with tears in her eyes and quickly enveloped Issei in a hug. Issei's hisses of pain and soreness went on deaf ears as the nun simply conveyed her relief to see him alive with her cries of joy. I was so worried. I thought he was going to keep hurting you, and I didn't. I'm sorry, Asia. Issei shamefully muttered when he saw the pitiful expression on Asia's face while tears went down her face. I didn't mean to make you worry.
I just didn't like how he threatened to hurt you, and that made me so damn mad I just. The blonde nun sniffed and rubbed the tears from her eyes as Issei flinched with guilt. He placed a hand on her head and rubbed her hair softly. I just don't want to put you in danger, and I don't want to make you worry either.
Asia whimpered and nodded her head. Please don't get caught like this again, Issei-san. I'll try my best. Naruto watched the scene with a smile before he looked up and saw Rias make her way over. She crouched in front of him. So were you worried about me too?
Her hand came around and slapped him across the cheek. Issei and Asia flinched as Azazel forced down his laughter. Naruto rubbed his cheek and looked back over to see Rias' eyes also barely containing the tears that threatened to fall. I guess it was kinda stupid to just jump into this fight like this, unprepared.
Obviously. I didn't mean to make you worry. I was just trying to help him, and I did what I thought was right. I know that. But I guess none of that really makes up for it, huh? Not even close. I'm sorry for making you worry. You should be. Rias said with a shaky voice. You should feel that sense of guilt 100 times over as punishment for your idiocy, stupid. The proud Gremory heiress voice lowered until it was almost silent, stupid. Rias felt his hand softly run through her hair before he gently pulled her forward and placed a kiss against her forehead. Her cheeks turned pink as she looked up at his apologetic smile. Thank you for coming to our rescue. Of course I would. Rias cleaned her face up to retain her composed, regal air, but it was slightly ruined by the redness of her eyes. I am your king, and so I will always be there to help when my peerage are in need.
I'm sorry too, Bucho. Issei apologized. Your family was being threatened and you wanted to protect Asia. As much as I want to reprimand you, I don't think there was any way that boy was going to leave you alone. Rias crawled over and pulled Issei into her chest for a comforting hug. I'm glad you're okay.
BB bucko, why your boobs? There, it's all okay.
Naruto looked over and saw Asia pout at the scene between the boy she loved and her king, with far more of the cleavage he loved than she could ever hope to have. She was jealous that Rias could comfort him in a way she couldn't, and Naruto was a little jealous he didn't get comforted like that either.
Seriously, you sleep with the girl, you just wouldn't understand? You're right, I don't. Thank God for that. Azazel laughed heartedly as the teens regained their energy. Well, good news is after a thorough spanking you both came out alive. Bad news is Valley's got his eyes on you now. So pretty much throw away any chances you ever had of having an enjoyable life. Fantastic. Naruto palmed his face. Things can never just be easy, can they? Sorry senpai. Bit late for that now. That bell end already made up his mind. Now I gotta figure out how to make Sage Mode work a little. No, not just for that. Issei interrupted Naruto's ramblings as he looked down with guilt. I'm sorry I got you into this mess in the first place. Not just against Valley, but when you saved me from you, Rainare. You weren't involved in any way and didn't have any of your old powers, but still you jumped in and tried to help me. And you died because of it. His expression fell further with each point raised as he failed to meet Naruto's eyes. I never brought it up because I don't know how I could say it without feeling guilty again. But if I don't, then it's never going to be said so. I'm sorry I got you killed, Naruto-senpai. I'm so sorry. Issei bowed his head apologetically to the whiskered blonde. The other spectators turned to the man in question to see the nervous expression on his face. He scratched his cheek before sighing. Yeah, sorry, I should have known that was weighing heavy on you. Senpai, look, that lady killed me, not you. And I helped you because I couldn't see you get hurt, so don't feel guilty about it. Plus, Naruto scratched his head and struggled to find the right words. I didn't totally die. I'm still here but a devil. And if I didn't become a devil, I'd still be a shell of my former self trying to get through each day. And if it never happened. His eyes lingered over to Rias before turning back and smiling at Issei. I don't blame you for what happened that night, but if it puts you at ease. I forgive you, Issei. Issei had a small tear fill in his eye before he sniffled and nodded his head in understanding. Well, that was sweet and good and all. Glad to see you started working out all your problems and are now on the road to becoming better friends. They glared up at the fallen angel before his smile fell. Oh shit, did I ruin it? Rias rubbed the bridge of her nose irritably. Azazel, what do we do now? Well, now I think you kids should go and recover from your fight. I'm pretty sure the sea tree girl and I can focus on fixing the area and wiping the bystanders' minds. The Governor General looked around. There's still a lot of work to do. Shouldn't we be prepared for those fights Valley said were coming? We will be. Azazel smiled and nodded sagely. I'll make sure to reach you all somehow in the future. Although don't be expecting to see much of me around here because there's still a lot of important shit for me to do. Devil. When the devils walked into the orc clubroom, Jaws and Bags dropped to the floor in disbelief. Only Rias was composed enough with a furious scowl and twitch of her eye to talk. What happened to all the important shit you had to take care of?
Turns out I could just drop it on my subordinates. Ha! Delegation. Azazel cheered, leaning back in the main chair and kicking his feet up on the desk in their room. The scruffy fallen angel was dressed in a fine suit and shoes and looked downright respectable if not for his personality and demeanor. You're looking at the new advisor for the Occult Research Club. I'm in your care.
Rias silently stepped up to the desk and stood in front of it with a cold gleam in her eyes. That's my chair. Is that any way to talk to a teacher? Okay, damn. Don't freeze me with that cold stare. The Governor General vacated the seat as the redhead devil quickly reclaimed her spot. Rias sat back in her chair. There's no way Onisama would sanction this. How do you think I got the job? This town is now neutral ground between all three factions and shall be used as territory to discuss important treaty matters of the future. So we'll be seeing a lot more of each other from here on out, Princess. Naruto raised his hand. 2 questions. 1. Did you grow a new hand?
What? No. PFF'd. Don't be ridiculous. Azazel raised his new limb and grinned with joy at the looks of surprise as the fingers separated into different devices and tools and mechanical pieces in an instant. I got this new piece of tech grafted on instead. Full of gadgets, tools, a vibration feature for all those saucy knights, and I can even launch a rocket punch. A serious upgrade from that old mess I used to have.
Your real arm? That's the one. Okay. And 2, since you're our sensei now, does that mean we can work together, full disclosure, and not be burdened by the tension of an international incident if something went wrong? Why yes. Yes we can. Cool, because I've been waiting to do this and can take detention. Naruto placed a hand on Azazel's shoulder. Thank you for the sacred gear. And followed up with a swift kick straight into the fallen angel's crotch. The peerage went silent in shock at the act. Naruto was silent at the completely unfazed expression on Azazel's face after receiving his vengeance. How? Oh kiddo, you think you're the first that's ever thanked me and followed up with a nutshot? I pretty much invented getting kicked in the balls. You did not, no, but I definitely mastered it. He casually wrapped an arm around the young ninja's shoulders and pulled him in. Stick with me kid and I'll teach you all the beautiful and horrible wonders I've experienced in this world. I'd rather not, it wasn't an offer, fuck. Devil, v Valley-sama. This was more extensive than I initially thought. It's going to take a lot more time to patch up the injury than anticipated. But it can be done, correct? I think so, then I have faith in you. Valley said to the young magician as he looked down at his arm. I can already feel the sensations returning to my fingers, so that's a good start.
NYA, hey Valley, need me to get in there and see what I can patch up? The flirtatious voice inquired from the side as the person asking remained lounged across the rock lazily. Because if you do then you gotta ask me really, really nicely, NYA. Not on your life. Pooh. Ha ha ha, but seriously, this was a crazy shock. A jovial voice laughed from the side with bundles of energy. Never thought I'd see Valley come back with an injury, especially when all he was going to do was challenge a barely initiated Red Dragon Emperor to a duel. What's wrong Valley? You slipping.
Don't make me shove the entirety of that staff up your ass.
Oh, okay, still can't take a joke I see. Cool, so you're totally the same. But honestly, how did this happen? A more refined voice asked from the other side of their base. What did you face there, Valley? If nothing else, a promise of enjoyment to come. Oh, there's the battle boner talking, NYA. Seriously, I'm worried whenever we see a war film he might leave a mess on the back of the seats. Ah ha ha. You two idiots are seriously pressing my patience. Devil.